This meeting of the Margate Planning Board is called to order. Please stand for the flag salute.
Attention salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Tom Collins. Here. Clem Wozleski. Here. Mike Richmond.
Here.
Jim Galantino.
Here.
Margaret Gubernalti.
Here.
Mike Cristaldi.
Here.
Craig Palmisano.
Here.
Despina Hess. Here. Rennie Pelosi. Joe DiGirolamo.
Here.
Rich Patterson.
Here. This meeting is being held in accordance with due public notice thereof and pursuant to the New Jersey State Sunshine Law. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the press, and a copy of same has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. All applicants are hereby advised that should you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form which informs you regarding the timing of receiving building permits and mercantile licenses. At the end of your case tonight, please see the board administrator to sign the two information sheets. I'd like to hear a motion to approve the minutes of November 30th, 2017.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It was Tom and Jimmy. All opposed? Motion passes. I'd like to hear a motion for the approval of decisions and resolutions number 49, 2017. Doreen Ward. Jim. Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I would like to hear a motion on the back of your agenda, a motion to adopt the meeting schedule for 2018, which with a few exceptions is the last Thursday of every month. Craig, Jim, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. First case tonight is Jeffrey Marshall, 110 South Douglas Avenue, Block 5.01, Lot 14 in the S30 district to grant C variances for coverage, side yard setback, rear yard setback, HVAC setbacks, D variance for height more than 10%, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Mr. Chairman, before we start.
Yes. I forgot to mention that in the paper today it said that there was a Margate food truck case was tonight, and that is not tonight. They didn't notify in time, is that correct?
They didn't submit in time.
They didn't submit in time, and that case will be,
January 25th.
would it be re-notified?
No,
Will it
if you're here from, if you're here from Margate Burger, which is 7903 Ventnor Avenue, Block 207.03, Lot 4, that's going to be adjourned. It's going to be 6:30, January 25th, 2017. In this room, the applicant will not be required to republish or renotice. Thank you.
And Mr. Collins and Mr.
Is it?
Galantino and Mrs. Gubernaldi will be recused. Please be sworn in, Mr. McLarnon.
Mr. McLaren, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you, Board Chairman, Board members. My report is dated November 29th, 2017, revised today, to acknowledge the revised plan submitted. The application is for Jeffrey Moschel, 110 South Douglas Avenue. The reason that they rescheduled is the notice was incorrect. They didn't notice for a D variance for the height. They re-noticed properly this time. Background for the application: the applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to elevate an existing non-conforming home on the beach block of South Douglas Avenue. The elevation of the house requires several variances, including but not limited to building coverage, height, AC unit setbacks for side and front yards, and landscape coverage. The site currently contains a non-flood compliant residential structure. You'll see my zoning chart on the application, and in bold italics are the changes based on the revised plan submitted. Two variances have been eliminated. One is the combined side yard setback variance. They pushed the deck to 8.5 feet back, so that eliminates that variance. And they're going to relocate the AC units, which eliminates that variance. The remaining variances are as follows. The front yard for the building, whereas 5.85 feet is the prevailing setback, 5 feet is the minimum if the prevailing is not existing, and 5.4 feet exists and is proposed. This is a vertical expansion of nonconformity. The second variance that is required is rear yard setback, whereas 12.5 feet from the required minimum setback, and 5 feet is proposed. Again, this is due to a vertical expansion of a nonconformity. Section 175, Attachment 4, Schedule B-1. Building coverage, whereas 39.375% is the permitted maximum, 43.3% is existing and proposed. Again, this is due to the vertical expansion of a nonconformity. Building height, whereas 30 feet from BFE plus 2 or ABFE plus 1 is permitted by Margate ordinance for maximum height of 30 and 34 feet is proposed. This is a D variance because it's more than 10% of the difference from the residential height regulation map and the flood damage prevention ordinance. Variance number 6 is the minimum distance between external walls of principal buildings, whereas 10 feet is a minimum permitted distance and 9.8 feet is proposed. My comments are as follows. Most, if not all, the existing nonconforming issues become variances due to the vertical expansion of these nonconformities, including height. The front yard setback requires a variance due to vertical expansion of the nonconforming structure. The combined side yard setback is due to the construction of the new deck. This has been removed. It now complies. Rear yard setback variance is another vertical expansion of a nonconforming setback, as is the building coverage and the landscape area. Comment number 7 is the building height exceeds allowable building height by greater than 10%, triggering a D variance. Currently at this location, our ordinance requires first floors to be located at a minimum elevation of BFE plus 2, or 3 if BFE equals 8, or ABFE plus 1. That's the advisory base map, which Margate still uses, whichever is more restrictive. In this case, both indicate an elevation of at least 12 for the finished floor. The floor may be higher, provided that the overall building height measured from elevation 12 remains at 30 feet or less. The existing measurement from finished floor to roof peak is 30 feet. New Jersey state law following Superstorm Sandy was passed allowing non-conforming structures and non-conforming uses to be elevated to base flood elevation plus 3 without triggering other variances. Bill number 2598 was introduced on February 21st, 2013, and provided guidance as to meeting this condition. One condition that follows, taken directly from the bill in my report. This bill will provide a partial exemption from local land use restrictions so as to allow a property owner to raise an existing structure to a new FEMA base flood elevation without violating local land use restrictions. The exemption would only apply to the extent or degree necessary to meet the new FEMA base flood elevation applicable to the location in question. In my opinion, I think I'm correct, is this condition is not being met and the D variance is being triggered. So therefore, a D variance is required as opposed to a C variance. A D variance was not advertised. That's old news. We know they notified properly this time. Comment number 8, the minimum distance between external walls of principal structures triggers yet another variance due to the vertical expansion. This variance is being caused by the building next door is actually encroaching onto the property. So that's a hardship variance. As for waivers, a waiver for providing a map of all properties within 200 feet should be requested. This map is provided within this report. There is an existing easement access easement for the property with the encroachment, and this shall be maintained free of fences, gates, and structures. The third floor meets the criteria for half a story. Again, the flood damage prevention ordinance is included in my report. And item number 6 under recommendations, I described the criteria for evaluating the C and C1 and C2 criteria as well as a D variance. That concludes my report at this time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Ian Syracusa of the firm Henkin, Sandman, Palladino, and Weintraub. I represent the Moschel family, who are the owners of 110 South Douglas, Lot 14, Block 5.01. Mr. Moschel is here tonight. This application is about an outmoded home, which in its present state constitutes an eyesore, with a yard that consists almost entirely of concrete, and on top of that, it's non-FEMA compliant. What Mr. Moschel plans to do is, number one, make the house FEMA compliant. Number two, he wants to do a complete makeover of the exterior of the home, which will radically improve its appearance, as you'll see, and bring it more into line with other houses on the block in terms of its character and aesthetic benefit. Additionally, he wants to remove a substantial portion of the concrete from the yard, bringing vegetative coverage from nearly 0% to over 22%. And finally, he wants to convert the crawl space into a garage, which will allow for enclosed off-street parking, which constitutes an aesthetic benefit as well. What we need to do what we need in order to accomplish all of these things is to raise the house 48 inches as measured from ABFE +1. And this will allow us to raise the ceiling height of the crawl space from 6 foot, which is the maximum height that we can go under the law now, to make it compliant with code. So at this time, I'd like to have Michael sworn in.
Sure, just state your name and business address for the record.
Could you speak into the microphone?
There's an extra mic over there.
Sorry. Michael Colchins, architect. Address is 6021 3rd Street, Mays Landing.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Could you provide the board with the benefit of your credentials?
Sure. I'm a registered architect in the state of New Jersey since 2003, I believe. All right, that was 1993, I'm sorry.
We accept his credentials.
Okay. I guess I'll touch on some issues that Roger brought up and also Ian brought up as far as where we're measuring from. Technically, we're asking for a 48-inch variance based on the Margate zoning ordinance. However, as Roger pointed out, there's a state law that would allow us to build this house at BFE +3 feet, which would be 6-foot headroom under the house, which is not enough to meet code for any kind of a usable space, but it's just about there. So what we're proposing to do is raise 2 more feet so that we can get garage underneath of the house with sufficient headroom for ductwork and beams and garage doors. That would eliminate, what we have existing is 2 concrete driveways, one on either side of the house. We can eliminate one of those driveways and turn it into substantially more landscaping, which would get us close to compliant with the overall site requirement of 33%, and we would be compliant with the front yard landscaping requirement. So,
Are you saying you could raise the house to 32 feet without a variance?
yes, 0 variances.
So you're,
So we are technically asking for 48 inches because that's what we have to call it, and that's one of the reasons why we had to re-notify, because we didn't realize, that that was not the correct
right.
measuring point. But in reality, we're only asking for 2 more feet than we could do without any variances.
I just wanted that clear.
And every other variance we're asking for is existing nonconformity. So technically, the big picture, what we're trying to do is, we have a house that we can raise to 6 feet above grade, or 6 foot headroom above grade with 0 variances. We just want to go 2 more feet so that we can get parking underneath of the house, which will free up a lot of yard for landscaping and hardscaping instead of concrete driveways.
You also need the extra room for the pool that you want to put under the house, correct?
I'm recessing, we're trying to eliminate the variances as much as possible. The mistake on the deck setback last week was just, I missed the combined coverage and I went with the, one of the things we did was, it was very important to my client to get a pool and a spa. We are proposing to recess it underneath of the house a little bit so that we don't need any variances instead of asking for relief to put it close to somebody's yard. A couple other things that we're doing. The whole process got started when my client wanted to do substantial renovations, and those renovations want to trip the 50% threshold to force us to raise the house anyhow. But part of that renovation is we're eliminating one bedroom. So there's 7 bedrooms existing, there will be 6 in the proposed structure. There's actually 2 kitchens in the house right now. There's not separate entrances, so it doesn't appear it was a duplex, but it might have been at one point. There will only be 1 kitchen in the revised design.
So you're planning on gutting the whole interior of the house?
Not the entire interior, but substantial portions.
New windows and sidings, roof?
New windows inside.
Basically, you're just leaving a shell of a building on the plot that it sits on?
I would say shell because there's substantial portions of the existing interior that are going to remain intact, but we're doing a lot of renovations, especially
But
basically the first 2 floors, the front half of the house is being substantially.
Right, to keep the 5-foot setback and everything in the rear yard, that's why it's also beneficial to raise the house that way, correct? So you don't have to conform to the codes that are there now.
And then this is a picture of the existing residence. This is a rendering of
Michael,
what we're
would
proposing.
you mind using one of these to the side so that people could see,
Sure.
not just my board members, please? If you could angle it a little bit, it would be.
Ian, if you feel the need to mark these exhibits, just, you can say so. I think we have them all in our packets.
Okay, yeah. The exhibit with the photorealistic rendering, I'd like to have marked as Exhibit A1. And the exhibit with the revised plans, I'd like to have marked as Exhibit A2.
I do have pictures of the existing houses besides.
Oh, okay. On the second page of that first set there, we have pictures of the houses in the neighborhood, which I'd like to have marked as Exhibit A3.
Got it.
Sir, can you tell me the existing elevation of the house now, as it stands now, the first floor elevation? I couldn't find it on here.
It's about 1 foot below what it would be. I think it's about 8, something like that. Right? It's about 3 feet above the existing grade. It's about 2 foot above where we have to go to just comply with the ordinance. There's a floodplain map.
It's below minimum FEMA compliant, FEMA requirements, correct, Mike?
Yeah.
Yes.
I apologize, I don't have the exact number, but I know it's about 2 feet below where we have to be just comply.
Mike, once we complete, once you are able to do these updates, the house will then be FEMA compliant, correct?
It would be FEMA compliant, but we're actually going
Okay.
higher than we have.
Do you know if this house flooded during the Sandy storm?
My client just bought the property over the summer, so they were not the owners during Sandy. You know if the house flooded during Sandy? My client said he heard third-hand that it did not.
Mike, could you speak about the vegetation increase that's going to occur,
Yes.
the percentages?
So, right, existing, there is literally just this little planter box in the front of the house. That's the entire vegetation cover on the entire site. I think it's 1.44% of the site. And then this is the proposed site plan. We're getting up to about 22% of vegetative cover on the entire site. But Margate also has a.
Could you talk directly into the mic? It's the recorder doesn't pick it up.
Sorry.
Thank you.
In addition to the coverage requirement for the entire site, there's also a front yard coverage requirement of 60%. We're exceeding that and compliant, and we will be, where we're not compliant now with about 5 or 6%, we will be compliant to that requirement.
Mike, isn't it true that only a small portion of the roof is going to exceed the maximum allowable height. I'm
Yes.
talking about the different peaks of the roof that are actually going to be above the maximum allowable,
Yeah, I mean, if you
allowable
look
heights,
at-
triggering the variance.
If you look at, I'll put the,
Okay.
swap.
Members of the board, I just wanted to point out that the first floor elevation is 9.6, 9.6 feet.
Existing?
Existing.
So on Douglas Avenue, you know, 2 foot would be this little triangle, I don't know if you can see it, and 4 foot would be a little bit more, so as a percentage of the entire roof, if we measured from the state law minimum, the 2 foot restriction would increase, the roof would be 4% of the roof would be exceeding the height. If we go by the zoning ordinance, 4 foot that we're asking for, the portion of the roof that would be higher than the minimum would be 10.7% of the roof. I think that was getting at what Roger was saying, we exceeded 10%, so we needed a D variance, but if we measure from the 2 foot height, or if the variance was only 2 foot, then we would only be exceeding it by 4%.
Mike, in your opinion, in light of the neighboring houses, will raising the height to this level impact views or air or light?
No. There's a house there now, we're just,
I do have one question. I don't have a framing plan in front of me, but I come up with 6'9" on the back porch there from what you're calling grade here. Are you gonna need 3 more inches to be legal? If your back porch over top of the pool,
well, there's gonna be 8 foot of headroom.
I don't have the framing plan. I don't know if you're cantilevering or you're sitting on a beam, but by the drawing.
There's more than 6 foot. There should be at least 7 foot underneath of the beam.
Underneath the, I'm coming up with 6'9", just by where you drew here.
The house will be, the underside of the house will be approximately 8 foot above grade, and the garage.
So then that's, you're,
so that beam
then
that
you're
you're
saying that's
seeing-
just a beam?
Yeah,
Okay.
that beam will be a foot, you'll have about 7 foot of headroom underneath the beam.
Okay.
And beyond the beam, you'll have 8 foot.
No, you'd have to come back 3 inches.
No.
Well, can't that be a condition? It's 7 foot, and then there's no problem?
That's Jimmy, that's not us.
That'll comply with the construction code.
Oh, okay.
That's not us. It's just giving them a heads up to make sure that they're not
Okay.
coming back here for 3 more inches.
Mike, did you say you're exceeding the 50% value?
Yeah, the entire process came about when we discussed the extent of renovations that the owners wanted to do. It was clear that they were going to see 50% value of the structure, and they were going to have to raise the house anyway.
So then the entire project will have to be up to the building code.
Yes.
Do the aesthetic improvements to the home bring it more into line with the character of properties on the block?
I believe so.
Could you speak about the aesthetic improvements a little bit?
Sure, I mean, right now you have stucco house, there's no real, I mean, in my opinion, there's not a whole lot of, aesthetic value to the existing structure. We're gonna be doing siding. I think the extended porches add a lot more depth and character to the house. Provided a little, gable roof over top of the master bedroom, not even because the owner asked for it, just to, help with the aesthetic of the house a little bit. And I think, all the landscaping that we're able to introduce because we're getting rid of the driveway and replacing it with garage space also is gonna, substantially improve the aesthetics of the neighborhood.
Does the enclosure of the cars in the garage also constitute an aesthetic benefit as well?
Yes. Right now, if you look at, this is the existing site plan, it's a giant parking lot. So I think you go from a not very attractive house with inside of a giant parking lot to an attractive house inside of a landscaped yard that would be in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood.
No part of this is going closer to the street, correct?
No, we are just raising the house. The only addition that we're doing is we're extending the existing porch 4 feet into the side yard, but we're staying within the allowable setbacks.
Can you give me the actual ridge height off the ground? There's 34 feet plus the ridge from the ground. The ridge from the ground, please.
I'm not good at doing math in my head, but the,
Well, I see 30, is it 34 and 11?
it would be 34 plus 8. Or 34 plus 9.
34 plus 9. 43 feet off the ground. Okay.
But again, it's only 2 feet higher than we would be allowed to do without any variances whatsoever.
No, it's only 2 feet.
There was one more positive criteria that I forgot to mention. We are actually proposing to cut into the existing habitable space on the first floor, and that would also be reflected on the ground floor foundation plan in order to increase the amount of deck, because outdoor space is important to my client. So we're actually decreasing the volume of the building on the first floor and also what would be the foundation level.
Michael, actually, I think you're only about 40 feet off a grade.
I'm not going to do a math.
His top of slab at 7.1, it goes up to 12, and then yeah, but at 8, he didn't take out correctly. Yeah, 34 feet to 12. You
My
have
point-
12 to 7 is 5,
34 foot to 12.
so it's 39. And that slab's about a foot higher off a grade, so there's 40.
Roger, when I was changing things and sending stuff out, I accidentally moved that tree up so that that slab should be close to grade level.
So you're around 39.
My point is-
When you're seeing the top of the slab looks like it's about a foot above grade, it's not actually, it's about evenly graded. When I was changing things around, I accidentally moved it up a little bit, the entire tree.
My point on the question was, at 43 feet, that's going to be the tallest house on the street,
I think
by
Roger-
far, and it's close, almost the closest to the beach also. I just don't like to see a precedent of,
I think Roger's right. I didn't have the exact number, and I can't, I'm not going to do a math in my head, but it would be, it's actually about 39 feet. I think it's actually 39 feet. The slab is 7. We're measuring from 12, so that's 5 feet, and on top of 34 would be 39 feet. I guess, you know, the bigger point to me is, or I would like to make, is that we're only asking for 2 more feet than we can do with 0 variances. Whatever it is, you know, whatever the exact numbers are, and I think 39 is the actual, is the.
If you weren't going to raise the house to put enough parking underneath, how would you have dealt with that?
Excuse me?
If you weren't gonna raise the house enough to have parking underneath, how would you have dealt with putting the other 2 spaces? Would you have had a driveway on the other side, or how would you have dealt with that?
That's a good question, because at that point, then we lose parking. If we lose parking in the house, I'd probably be forced to have parking on the other side of the house, which would totally change, you know, the entrance and affect the pool, and might, you know, it might get to the point where the owners have to reconsider the entire project.
So would you lose permeable space on the lot?
I don't,
to add the parking?
your ordinance requires 4 parking spaces. I can only get 3 parking spaces on the driveway to
Right.
remain. So we'd either have to get a variance for less parking than is required, or I'd have to redesign this area right here to get another parking space in.
Mike, do you want to show them the pictures of the other houses on the block and how this improvement is going to bring it more into line with the character of those other houses?
Sure. I mean, in regard to the height, there are some fairly high houses on that block. I mean, this one right here, there's,
It's a chimney, right?
or- we have a garage, and it looks like there's at least 2 habitable floors above the garage, so that.
Yours will be 3 stories above the garage, correct?
2.5.
2.5, 3?
2.5.
Yeah. Third floor, 50%.
Third floor is less than 50% of the second floor.
Okay, a little less.
Definitely less.
Here's another one's got 2 stories, and it's got, it appears like there might be some habitable space in there for that.
Mike, would you agree that there's a physical hardship element here as Mr. Moshel's forced to live with this house in the condition that it is right now?
I mean, you know, he's taking a chance on the next storm if he doesn't raise the house.
Put the mic up.
I'm sorry. He's taking a chance on the next storm if he doesn't raise the house. You know, he bought the house with the expectation that he would be able to add deck space and outdoor space, and you know, because they are outdoor people, and you know, as I mentioned, we're actually giving up habitable space to create more deck space. So, you know, if he doesn't get these variances, it would be, you know, a hardship to the Moschels.
The protection from safety, fire, flood, and panic, and other natural and man-made disasters, that constitutes a special reason, correct?
Yes.
And also the promotion of a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement as well, right?
Yes.
And the modifications will provide relief along both those lines, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Could you tell me whether the overall benefits substantially outweigh any detriments?
I believe so. I mean, we're getting substantial landscaping where we have no landscaping. We are taking, you know, parking off of the yard and under the house. I think the aesthetic, you know, the aesthetics of the addition, of the renovations are a drastic improvement over the existing structure. Landscaping is drastic improvement over the existing, you know, all concrete. So I believe so.
Do you conclude that there will be no substantial detriment to the public good, and that, in fact, the protection from flood will actually benefit the public?
Yes.
And also that due to all the benefits, the proposed plans that you guys wish to conduct will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zoning plan and zoning ordinances, Mike?
Matter of fact, it's my understanding that there might be a change to the ordinance in the works where you're going to be allowing this kind of parking underneath the house. So it sounds like it might be in keeping with something that's being considered.
I'm not familiar with that.
We talked about it.
What'd you say, Mike? I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you.
I may have heard wrong. I thought there was discussions in Margate to actually modify the ordinance to allow this.
You're correct in that.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's not law.
Roger had mentioned that in his report.
It's not law, but we're,
Under
Right.
consideration.
Separate from the 30-foot.
yes.
Okay. My apologies.
I do have a question about the garage area. That's not going to be converted to a pool house?
No.
Just going to be storage and garage, correct?
Garage, pool equipment, and road storage.
Okay,
Is there access from the garage to the pool?
yes.
Mike, what's the pitch on the roofs of the ground?
They were going to match existing. I think it's about a 10-12 pitch.
On the dormer?
The existing dormer?
On the dormer?
That dormer is existing. It's low pitch. It's low pitch.
Oh, that's existing?
Yeah, it's existing. The only new construction, Clem, is we're extending the existing decks, and I put a small dormer over top of the new windows to help out the front elevation. Other than raising the house, those are the only additions.
So finally, Mike, I just want to ask you again, all of the variances that are triggered due to raising the house, the existing non-conforming, that's due to a vertical expansion of the house, and we're not increasing the footprint of the house in any way that would trigger a variance, correct?
Matter of fact, we're actually decreasing the footprint on the first floor and the ground floor levels. You're right. Essentially, all the variances are existing nonconformities except the variance to raise the house. Technically, we have to say it's 4 foot, but in reality, it's only 2 foot higher than we could do with 0 variances.
Do you have anything else you want to add, Mike?
I'm done.
You done? Okay.
Would you be willing to deed restrict that ground floor to storage and garage?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Would you be willing to deed restrict that ground floor to garage space and storage space?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else any other questions from the board? Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this case? You need to be sworn in, state your name, address, and then wait to be sworn in.
Okay. My name is Bridget Sykes. I'm an attorney with Fox Rothschild. My business address is 1301 Atlantic Avenue in Atlantic City, and I represent Gary Bard, the property owner of 111 South Essex Avenue, which is located directly behind Mr. Moshel's property on the Essex Avenue side.
Can you, your client's name again?
Garrett, didn't bring water. Gary Bard, Gary-B-A-R-D.
Yeah, and as an attorney, you're speaking on behalf of
I'm
the client,
speaking on
correct?
behalf of a client,
You
yes.
don't have to swear you in.
Okay. Mr. Bard was here for the last hearing. He lives in Florida and is only up here part-time, so that's why I'm speaking on his behalf. Obviously, the five-foot rear yard setback is the biggest variance that's currently existing on the property and would be the biggest impact as a result of the raising. Mr. Bard and Mr. Moshel had some discussions regarding the impact of the raising of the house on his property. And Mr. Moshel has made some different concessions, including bringing back the side yard deck to meet the combined side yard setback and also eliminating the HVAC variance that was previously applied for. And he's also making some other, has agreed to eliminate some of the other aesthetic features on the oceanside elevation of the property, all of which are going to substantially mitigate the effect of the height on his property. So we wanted to let the board know that he speaks in favor of the application and that he's happy that he has a neighbor who is willing to work with him.
Thank you. Anyone else? Why are you all here? Public portion is closed. Any other questions or comments from the board? Would you read a motion, please?
Sure. We'll start with there's going to be a motion for a height variance, which is a D variance, because they're more than 10% over the permitted maximum. So I'm going to start with that, and that's going to require 5 affirmative votes, so I want everyone to know that. And the C variances are essentially triggered because they need the height variance, but they're not expanding or exacerbating any of them. So we'll need a motion for D variance relief to permit a building height of 34 feet above BFE plus 2 or ABFE plus 1, where 30 feet is the permitted maximum, together with the following C variances: front yard setback to the building of 5.4 feet, where 5.85 feet is required, rear yard setback of 5 feet, where 12.5 feet is required, building coverage of 43.3%, where 39.375% is the permitted maximum, and a variance from the minimum distance between external walls of principal buildings of 9.8 feet, where 10 feet is required. The following conditions will apply. The applicant will deed restrict the ground floor to garage and storage space only, and all other representations made by the applicant during the course of the hearing, and all other conditions set forth in Mr. McLaren's report of December 14th, 2017, unless modified on the record tonight or otherwise modified.
Hear a motion?
I'm so,
Oh,
I'm so sorry. There's just one more brief comment that I want to make. I've been, I know. I've been authorized by the neighbor immediately next to Mr. Moschel, Stan Silverman, at 108 South Douglas Avenue, to speak on his behalf in his support of this application. He sent a letter to Mr. McLaren giving me permission to do that. That's it. Thank you.
motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mike?
I'll second it.
Mike?
Question.
Tom Collins?
Two votes or one vote?
No, one vote. One vote.
No Tom, no Tom.
No Tom.
Tom Simon?
Oh, sorry. Clem Wozleski.
Here you go, Clem, you're up.
Thank you. I'll certainly be happy when the great state of New Jersey makes up their mind what they want to do with floor elevations after Superstorm Sandy. Keeps changing more often than I can keep track of it. Seems the primary reason for wanting to raise this house is to get additional parking. Parking in the beach block, as we know, is not permitted in the summertime. So that gives us a basic problem with it. In addition, on this street, just the other side of Atlantic Avenue, nearing completion of construction, is a large multifamily residential building. And we recently approved a mixed-use one with multifamily on the corner, so parking, which is already bad, is going to get worse. The existing building is, to say the best for it, an eyesore. And I think, although this proposal is pushing the limits, that the bottom line is that it's a sufficient improvement overall to justify the variances asked for. I vote to approve the application.
Rich Patterson?
I think it's been presented that the applicant has worked with the neighbors to minimize any impact. I think it's important that the house is no closer to the street than it was before, so I don't see how it could make views any worse. I appreciate the more landscaping and improving the neighborhood, and I approve the application. I don't see any negative impact. I approve the application.
Mike Cristaldi?
Raising the house gets our CRS up a little bit more, being flood compliant. The side yard hardships, I don't consider them hardships when you're raising a house straight up. Everybody's living with what's there. The percentage that we're going above doesn't mean anything but the new aesthetics for the neighborhood. I think the neighbors would even have to vote yes on this. I vote yes.
Craig Palmisano?
It's a very tough one for me here. I think this is setting a precedent, and I don't want to see other homeowners come in and want the same thing on that street. I think the air will be blocked somewhat by a larger house, and it's close to the beach. This house is the second one from the beach, and all the others on the street appear to me to be just two-story homes. There are some good things with it. The vegetation would be added to it, but I'm not going to go for the extra height. I vote no.
Despina Hess?
I am going to vote in favor of both the D and the C variance in this situation. I believe that the benefits do outweigh any potential detriments. Most notably, although we do have a 4-foot variance, as was noted by the applicant, it is only a 4% if we're going by the state requirements and only a 10% percentage overage if we're going by the city requirements. That is the most significant factor in my opinion, because the design is minimizing the portions of the roofs that are going over the permitted height, and I believe that's seriously significant because that allows for more air, light, and open space for the nearby neighbors. The neighbor support was also crucial in being in favor of this application, because I believe in addition to the new design, we're getting a FEMA compliant home and an increase in greenscape for all of the neighbors, as well as more parking for near and far neighbors. So for all those reasons, I vote in favor of the application.
Joe DiGirolamo?
I think the redesign of the property is going to improve the overall appearance in the neighborhood. It becomes flood compliant, and I like the fact that it dropped from 7 bedrooms to 6 bedrooms, and that you now have parking underneath of the house. And we did put a restriction on the ground, the area of the garage, preventing from any other use other than for a garage and storage. It is the pluses outweigh the minuses, and I think the support of the local neighbors was another crucial decision. I vote in favor.
Michael Richmond?
I think that with the new FEMA regulations that higher houses are the way of the world. I think that mitigating the parking impact by having parking underneath, especially in the beach block, is important. I was also contacted by the neighbor next door, Sam Silverman, who gave his support to the project, and obviously the rear neighbor did. I really don't see any issue with it. I'm going to vote yes.
Application passes 6-1. Ian, will you please come sign?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Next case is Adventure Golf South LP, 9312 Ventnor Avenue, Block 127, Lot 85, in the CBD District to grant a major site plan and C variances for parking. For parking, fence height, and freestanding sign, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. McLarnon?
Thank you, Board Chairman, Board members. The application is in regard to Adventure Golf South LP, 9312 Ventnor Avenue.
Roger.
Yes.
Maybe we should deal with a couple letters I got first before we get into your report, if that's all right.
That's fine with me.
Okay. I did receive 3 letters, or Joanna did. I might have, whether she forwarded them to me, they came directly to me, I'm not sure. I'm not going to get into the substance of them because that's hearsay, but they all in one form or another do request an adjournment, so I'm just going to read who they're from and the portions. The first one I have is from an attorney, James Malley, December 12th, 2017, who I also spoke to, and he didn't get into the merits. It's a letter addressed to Ms. Casey. This office represents several condominium associations adjacent to the property subject to the above referenced application. Many of the property owners have just received notice in the last few days of the public hearing to be held this Thursday evening. They have retained our services to represent their interests at the hearing. Because of the short time within which these residents have had notice of this application, we on their behalf respectfully request an adjournment of the hearing to the January Planning Board meeting. Allowing the postponement of this matter will allow your residents an opportunity to learn of the project and take the appropriate steps to represent their interests. We appreciate your attention to this matter. Again, that's from James Malley. I got one dated December 14th, 2017 from Dennis and Judith Tully, T-U-L-L-I. They represent that they own the property at 12 South Adams. They get into some merits, but at the end, I'm just going to read a portion. We respectfully request, because that's hearsay, so that's not relevant, or it's not admissible. We respectfully request an adjournment of this hearing to a future date so we may better prepare with the help of legal counsel. Due to a business conflict, we are not able to attend the meeting on the 14th of December. I did speak to Dennis Tully today, and the final one is from an attorney. It's written on attorney letterhead named Kenneth Barretts, but he's writing as the owner of property at 14 South Adams, not as an attorney. Again, he gets into some of the issues, but I blocked off a portion where he's basically requesting an adjournment. We are trying to obtain counsel to seek advice and representation. However, on such short notice, this has proven to be a challenge. In fact, I too did not have sufficient notice to enable me to appear tonight personally. Perhaps a postponement might be in order to enable the residents to properly present our opposition and retain counsel. So those are the 3 letters I got. My understanding is that Mr. Balanson has every intentions of proceeding tonight. Do you want to be heard on that briefly?
Sure. Members of the board, Chris Balanson on behalf of Adventure Golf. Mr. Manos made me aware of the adjournment request by members of the public. We have in fact noticed properly to the 200-foot list that was provided from your tax assessor's office, and I would like to proceed tonight in light of the adjournment request. We're here with a full house. It seems to me sufficient notice was given to all interested parties, and in that regard, we'd like to go forward.
And we can confirm that notice was properly given according to law. The notice went out. They were published with sufficient amount of the legally required notice. Now, the case law says objectors can request an adjournment, and it's up to the board whether they want to grant that. And the board has discretion here. The standard is essentially considering all the factors, whether they want to grant that or proceed tonight. And it's an abuse of discretion standard. So the law gives the board a lot of discretion here, but they just can't abuse their discretion. So I don't know if we want to have a straw poll or something like that. If you're here, you'll have the chance to speak during the public portion.
Can I be heard as an attorney?
No.
Are you representing clients?
I do. My name is Alice Cupiolo. I'm an attorney, law offices of
Please
Alice
speak into
Cupiolo.
the microphone.
Alice Cupiolo, law offices of Alice Cupiolo. I'm a property owner at 11 South Adams Avenue. And I just wanted to say that
Is she speaking on behalf of a client or on behalf of herself as a property owner?
I don't know.
I'm speaking on behalf of myself, a client of my law firm.
The client of your law firm.
Yeah.
No.
I have a law firm, and I am absolutely able to represent myself,
And you will.
and I am a property.
And you can say there's going to be, if it proceeds tonight, there's going to be a public portion.
I just wanted to be heard as to whether or not it should be heard tonight.
I have no objection, Mr. Manos.
Briefly, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just
But
thinking.
we're not going to open it up to everybody on this issue, but go ahead.
Understood. So the issue is whether the prejudice outweighs.
Yeah, I'm going to have to swear you in. What's your address again?
11 South Adams Avenue, you do not have to swear an attorney in.
But you're speaking as a property owner.
I'm not. I'm
Go ahead,
speaking-
proceed. Proceed.
I'm speaking as an attorney in a law firm on behalf of myself, a client. Okay? So the owner of the property is a client of my firm. I don't think it's that difficult. So really, it's just an issue as to whether or not the prejudice that the golf people are proposing, is it going to prejudice them if we wait 1 month? Is the prejudice to them going to be so outrageous? However, the prejudice to the homeowners who are wishing to get attorneys and properly present the case, they would be prejudiced completely if this went forward tonight, because they would be barred from presenting their case. The golf establishment can bring their case in 1 month, and they would suffer no prejudice. What are they going to be set back 1 month in building a golf establishment? It won't open till the spring anyway. So I'm just saying the prejudice here far outweighs for the homeowners than it would for the golf establishment.
Sure.
This application is no different than any other application. It obviously affects more people because more people are here, but it's no different than a variance application for a home which has the same notice requirements, which were followed. I didn't hear any particular prejudice that was set forth from Ms. Cupiello. Other than, there's some 70,000 lawyers in New Jersey. I mean, there's plenty of lawyers to handle this case. And the notice was given just like everybody else. The prejudice to the applicant would be jeopardizing potentially opening up for the summer. That's a real risk, and that's one of the reasons we want to go forward, to have the time within which to build the course should an approval be granted. Thank you.
Can I ask for a board vote? Can I do that now?
Yeah, if you want to have a little bit of discussion, you want to take a straw poll, if anyone feels that the matter should be adjourned, they can make a motion.
Just for some group board discussion, I think one thing that we should consider is, are we going to get enough feedback from the neighbors? And I think that there is a substantial showing, so we'll at least be able to hear from the neighborhood. Just something that I am considering in my vote.
I think everything was done properly. I don't, my opinion is let's go forward.
Do we need a motion, or can we just take a vote like we do on oh no, it is a motion. Right.
It would be a motion to grant an adjournment. So if someone wants to make that motion and someone wants to second it, then we'll go forward with a vote. If no one makes the motion or no one seconds it, then it's going to go forward because there's nothing to pass.
All right, I'd like to hear a motion to adjourn this meeting or postpone this till next month. Would someone like to make that motion? No motion was made. The meeting will not be postponed.
A board member
Please
needs
sit
to
down.
make the
No,
motion.
everybody gets a chance to talk at public participation.
I think we've decided to go forward. Roger,
We've decided to go forward.
you can proceed.
Where was I? Okay. Thank you, board members, board chairman. In reference to Adventure Golf South LP, 9312 Ventnor Avenue, Zone CBD, which is Central Business District Zone. Requesting C variances, major site plan, preliminary and final. This is the planning and zoning report. Background: the applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the city of Margate in order to construct a miniature golf course. The application is also seeking preliminary, final, and major site plan approval. The site is currently occupied by a vacant bank, site that has been closed for some time. Prior to the bank, the site was occupied by two separate structures with a drive aisle from Ventnor Avenue. Several variances and waivers are being requested as outlined below and in the engineer's report. The site is adjacent to the multifamily zone. My zoning chart is included in this report. The documents reviewed are on page 2 and 3. The variances required are as follows. A parking variance for commercial, whereas one space per 200 square foot of building is required, or 2 spaces, and whereas 0 spaces are being provided. A variance for 2 spaces is required, section 175-36B, parking schedule I. Second variance, fence height, whereas 5 feet is the maximum height permitted without a pool, and 5.67 feet exists and 8 feet is proposed. That's along the buffer. Freestanding sign, whereas freestanding signs are not permitted and one is being proposed. None exist at this time. Sign height. In the height, I mean the actual physical height of the sign itself, now how high it is off the ground. Whereas 3 foot minimum is the maximum height permitted and 10 feet is proposed. Sign area, whereas 3 foot is the maximum height permitted and 10 feet. Sign area is, sorry about that. 35 square feet is proposed, or is required, and 52.5 square feet is proposed, so they need a variance for that. Waivers requested, please see the engineer's report, and it's in condition with this checklist. A major site plan checklist should have been used instead of the minor site plan, but the staff committee application doesn't distinct between a minor and a major site plan. The fees that were paid are consistent with a major site plan. My comments are as follows. The current zone is CBD, or Central Business District Zone. Schedule B2 is indicated below. Schedule, page 5 indicates Schedule A2, which shows the permitted uses in this zone. I would like to point out retail services as a permitted use in the CBD zone. The proposed application is a retail service by definition in the city's ordinance. It's a permitted use in this zone. The schedule of uses does not prohibit miniature golf courses or any other amusement within the CBD zone. Zoning analysis concluded that the proposed use falls within retail sales or retail service use, therefore is a permitted use. Miniature golf courses have previously been proposed or have existed within the CBD zone and the WSD zones within the city of Margate. The current bank site has 20 off-street parking spaces. The current zoning ordinance requires 1 space for each 300 square foot of floor area for a bank. Comment number 4, the current parking requirements for this use, retail sales and service uses, not separately listed, 1 space per 200 square foot of building area. Based on the square footage of the building, 2 spaces are required for this site. There are 3 curb cuts and driveways on the site, 2 on Ventnor Avenue and 1 along Adams Avenue, that would be eliminated, that would create 3 on-street parking spaces at a minimum. The proposed fence height of 8 feet requires a variance, as the maximum fence height without a pool is 5 feet. The proposed fence will be part of the required buffer between residential and commercial zones. The residential zone is a multifamily zone. Apparently, the fence height was requested by the neighbor in my discussions with the applicant. Comment number 7, freestanding signs are not permitted in any zone within the city of Margate. One is being proposed as the building is set back from the property lines and would not be visible if the sign was mounted on the building. Signs are permitted to be mounted on buildings, which in turn are permitted to have a 0-foot setback on front yards. Since the site is located on a corner, the site has 2 front yards, meaning that the area to be occupied by the sign could be occupied by a building 34 feet tall with signs at those locations. Item number 8, a variance is also required for sign area. Sign area is permitted to be 35 square feet based on the ordinance, and 52.5 square feet is proposed. Hello? If a building was constructed across the entire frontage of Ventnor Avenue and the same sign was building mounted, the sign would be permitted for area. Item number 9, the sign height proposed also requires a variance for the physical height of the sign itself, not including the stand. The maximum height is 3 feet, and the proposed height is 10 feet, or 9 feet, 11 3/4 inches. I rounded up. The minimum height of the sign measured from the ground cannot be less than 10 feet. The proposed sign meets that condition. However, there's been a subsequent submission of the sign, but I think they are willing to comply with the minimum height of 10 feet off the ground. The proposed golf site reduces impervious coverage drastically, so runoff is being reduced. Furthermore, the applicant is actually proposing to install on-site drainage facilities to further reduce runoff. Item number 11, the site by definition is not a major development as determined by DEP standards and is exempt from higher stormwater regulations. 12, the site is subject to tidal storm events, just as are the adjacent properties. This will not contribute to tidal flooding. Item number 13, the proposed use and location meets one of the objectives of the master plan, as well as a pedestrian and bicycle study in which the site is adjacent to the desired pedestrian corridor linking the beach and the bay along Washington Avenue. The site is anticipated to draw both pedestrian and bicycle traffic to the site. Recommendations, all waivers requested may be granted without harm, as most, if not all, requested do not apply to this site as it is an existing site. The variances being sought require testimony from the applicant to satisfy both the C1 and C2 criteria, hardship, negative criteria, positive criteria, etc., as explained in my report. One item that the engineer pointed out, and I wanted to point out in my report also, is there is a request to maintain the streetscape standards as recommended within the engineer's report, try to maintain existing decorative lighting and the brick pattern to keep that site intact. The condition of any approval shall be the applicant receiving all required permits, including soil erosion sediment control permits and Atlantic County approvals. All recommendations in the engineer's report shall be complied with or waivers granted. That concludes my report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. Members of the board, my name is Chris Balance, and I represent Adventure Golf South LP. Applicant tonight seeking site plan approval and variance relief in order to develop 9312 Ventnor Avenue, identified in the tax map as block 127, lot 85, with an 18-hole miniature golf course identified as Congo Falls. What is proposed is a recreational amenity which is permitted in the CBD zone where the site is located. Specifically permitted, if you look in the ordinance, under the CBD zone, retail services are permitted. If you look at the definition of retail services, amusement services is specifically enunciated. I don't think the use is an issue. It's a permitted use in the zone.
I concur.
What we're trying to bring, or what Adventure Golf is trying to bring to Margate, is one family-oriented recreational use for kids, for adults, whoever it may be, which Margate since just lacks. Since the Jefferson Avenue Miniature Golf Course went away for residential uses, the movie theater no longer exists. Aside from the beach, there really is nothing for the kids to do in a recreational nature. This will provide some relief to that, although one use, some relief to that in an area where it's designed to be. And we recognize that we share a zoning district boundary line with the multifamily zone, and it just so happens that Adams Avenue between Ventnor and Atlantic is a very dense residential street, very dense. There are, the condominium buildings on that street have more units than you would think that they have. And there's nothing we can do about that. That's an existing condition. We have designed the site to be site-specific to the Adams Avenue corner. It is not a prototype picked up from the boardwalk in Ocean City or picked up from the amusement park in Sea Isle and just dropped here. It is a redesigned site to fit within this site, to fit within this piece of property, and to best accommodate the neighborhood as possible. With that being said, you'll hear that the only variances associated with the request are a variance for 2 parking spaces. As per the ordinance, what is required is 2 spaces based upon the square footage of the building. Fence height along the Wawa frontage and along the ocean frontage, really for privacy and safety. I think our prior ordinances allowed taller fences between residential and commercial uses. That provision of the ordinance didn't make it through the amendment, but we think in this instance it's appropriate. The other variance is for a sign. As was pointed out, we are seeking a freestanding sign on the corner. That really is for identification purposes, traffic safety purposes, pedestrian safety. The only signs permitted in the commercial zone in Margate anymore are building-mounted signs. As you'll see from the site design, the registration building is somewhat up Adams Avenue, so a sign mounted on the building wouldn't benefit the site at all.
Can you explain transportation safety?
I will. The identification to motorists on Ventnor Avenue. Having a sign at the corner will at least give some advance notice to a motorist coming from the Longport direction or the Atlantic City direction that the miniature golf course approaches, rather than someone who is not familiar with the site driving down Ventnor Avenue and stopping all of a sudden in front of the site, possibly causing a traffic problem. Or someone slowly kind of meandering through Ventnor Avenue looking for it. We know that in the summertime, that Adams Avenue intersection can be problematic. You have 3 restaurants close by who kind of freestyle the crossing of the street, getting from the parking lot to the restaurant. There are pedestrians, unfortunately, in the street at that location. We think a sign, any kind of advance notification to the public would be helpful. Parking variance, sign variance, fence variance, that's all. Otherwise, it's a site plan approval. We will work with the city engineer, and we'll work with Mr. McLaren with respect to their comments. I have 2 witnesses tonight, Mark Benevento from Adventure Golf South and Ed Howell, licensed professional planner and architect. I think they could both be sworn, Mr. Manos, at the same time.
Sure. You can both come up, state your name and address for the record. I'll swear you both in.
Edwin Howell, registered architect, registered land planner in the state of New Jersey, 9 Otter Lane, Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey.
Mark Benevento, 822 Boardwalk, Ocean City, New Jersey.
And if can each raise your right hand, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
All set. With that having been said, I'll start with Mr. Howe. Ed, you can put your site plan up?
Sure.
We will mark Mr. Manos. Site plan board can be A1, today's date.
Okay, has Mr. Howell appeared before us before?
I'll go all through his credentials. Mr. Howell, if you would you give the board the benefit of your background and your credentials to testify today, and you can stand by your board?
All right.
Which will be your position
I've got-
generally throughout the evening?
I've got a pointer, so I'm going to use the pointer.
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey. My license, I was licensed in 1980, been practicing architecture for 37 years. And I'm a licensed land planner, been practicing land planning for 35 years.
Ed, let me stop you there for a moment. For the benefit of those who are not familiar with it, maybe in the audience, what is land planning? What does that give you the ability to do?
Well, land planning is the evaluation of zoning requirements or particular requirements of various zones in communities to assist with communities in developing zoning ordinances, interpretations of ordinances. I have in the past been a consultant to several communities in the development of new ordinances that were required and that changed their ordinance as they needed with a zone plan review. Every 6 years, there's a requirement that there be a review of the zoning ordinance, and I participated in several of those.
So it's the development or layout of a community and the appropriate layout of a community, how things work together is one component of that?
Yes, yes, exactly.
I interrupted you. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's right.
You can proceed. You
Um,
told us about your architectural license, your planning license, and the benefit of some other credentials you may have. How about with your experience with adventure golf, with designing miniature golf courses?
We have, Mr. Benevento and I have worked together for 25 years, and I have designed every one of their adventure golf projects except for one. And currently, we're redesigning a portion of that facility right now. We've designed a golf, miniature golf, adventure golf in Avalon, in their central business district, and in Sea City, in their central business district. We have an adventure golf in the bank and office zone on 9th Street in Ocean City, and several on the boardwalk.
Any of the sites you just referenced, do they share a zoning district boundary line with a residential zone?
Yes.
Or are they surrounded by residences?
Yes.
Okay, we have an exhibit tonight to show that.
Yes, we do.
Are you familiar with Margate zone plan and zoning ordinance, and do you have any background or familiarity with Margate and the way it has developed over the years?
I do. Graduating architectural school, I moved to Trenton and worked in an office in Trenton, developing office buildings, schools, and various other state-related projects. Having grown up down at the shore, it only took me 2 years to realize that I needed to get back down to the shore. Came in and actually interviewed with Mr. Wozleski for a job back in the day.
How old are you?
And, but did my apprenticeship with Robert Johnson in his office and actually worked with Tommy Sykes and Bill Salerno in their office until Tommy and I received our licenses, and then we left that office. He and Bill formed a partnership, which you probably all are aware of the success of that. I moved to Ocean City and opened my practice in Ocean City.
So you are familiar and have familiarized yourself with Margate's zoning ordinance?
Yes, I am.
And you looked at, I know recently, the proposed master plan?
I did.
Amendments. If you would, Ed, would the board accept Mr. Howell's credentials to testify? Thank you. If you would, Mr. Howell, would you take the board and the audience through the existing conditions at the property and the zoning of the property?
I will. And actually, the exhibit that I have, which is an overhead or satellite photograph of the neighborhood, might be helpful to do that.
Whatever makes it easier for you.
We already marked A1, so I'll call the satellite photograph A2.
Thank you. First, Mr. Howell, just describe what that exhibit is that's been identified as A2.
A2 is a global or Google Earth photograph of the site, and just for everybody's reference point, I hope I don't shine this in anybody's eyes, but our site is right there. Ventnor Avenue, Adams Avenue, the Wawa. So our site is right there. This is an overhead view to show the various other uses, the commercial uses along the central business district, and the residential uses behind the multifamily and commercial and residential use right beside or to the east of our property.
I think it's important for purposes of the record to identify the adjacent uses and let us know, are they to the east, to the west, and just what they are to the best of your knowledge.
To just reference everybody to the site plan that you have in front of you, when I'm referencing the plan, to the left will be to the north, to the top will be to the east, bottom west, and south will be to the right. That references the survey that you also have, so that's just for reference point. So
Let's do this. To the north, immediately adjacent is the Wawa site. Is that
that's
right?
correct.
And
Yes.
to the south, as you said, across Adams Avenue, that's on the corner is a multi-use condominium retail building where there's a massage parlor, I believe.
That's correct.
And to the south of that, you've got a breakfast restaurant and a pizza.
That's
parlor.
correct. So these are commercial uses along the avenue. There's a parking lot right there for the restaurant that's across the street.
So from corner to corner on the ocean side of Adams Avenue is all commercial.
That's correct,
And
yes.
and that would be the same between Adams and Washington.
Yes.
And across the street, across Ventnor Avenue to the bay side, again, from the corner of Washington to Adams is all commercial.
That's correct.
There is some residential components above some of those shops, but all at grade commercial.
That's correct.
And then from Adams to Jefferson, again, all at grade commercial, being a mix of restaurants and shops.
Yes.
Have you looked at the permitted uses in the CBD zone, and do you find the miniature golf use permitted?
Yes, I do. The miniature golf use is permitted by a retail service activity or use. And in the definition section of the ordinance specifically are amusements and recreation type uses. And I would consider this an amusement along with recreation. So it's really a two-part type use that would fit perfectly in the central business zone.
And could you give us the dimensions of the site? How big is it?
The site is 125 feet along Ventnor Avenue and 125 feet along Adams. 15,000 and some square feet in size.
And have you looked at the site for purposes of developing it with, for instance, a mixed-use building, or what is also permitted in the zone is a retail at grade, residential above?
Yes, I have.
And as a permitted use, how could the site be developed in that regard?
As a permitted use, there would be a requirement that the grade level along Ventnor be retail or some sort of commercial use that would be a permitted use in the central business district. Residential uses are permitted above that. The setbacks from Ventnor Avenue would be 0 setback for a front yard setback, 0 setbacks on side yard on Adams and against the Wawa property. And the building would probably be in the neighborhood of 34 feet tall.
About
right
terms
at-
of density, number of units, number of retail spaces, did you?
Well, the density in the ordinance is defined by the number of bedrooms in the residential units, and I would say that we would end up with a 6-unit residential development. Above retail, and just how that retail would lay out would be a variation of how we could fit the parking on the site. But in any event, there would be parking for both residential and commercial on the site.
If you would you take an exhibit that you have with respect to the miniature golf course and show us how that site lays out, and then walk us through the course?
Sure. Excuse me.
Germanis, that can be applicants 3, which will be another overhead. I'm sorry, it'll be a rendering of the golf course layout.
I think it would be helpful for everybody that's going to go around the course with me to see a rendered site plan rather than this. This is kind of one-dimensional. I don't know the way you could really make out the layout of the site.
Whatever you think would best describe it to everyone.
So I'll put that aside and I'll describe a rendered site plan.
We don't need detail on every hole,
Beg your pardon?
or how it's played, or what the par is.
No, I can give you one example about how to design these. Is every hole is designed to go down in grade rather than up, because you never want the ball to go away from you and come back to your feet.
Why don't you take us through as a user,
Sure.
a new user to the site?
One of the things that we have in every one of the sites that we have developed as a miniature golf course is that it's on a corner. And here we have Adams Avenue, and then there's Ventnor Avenue.
Adams Avenue to the right of the plan, and Ventnor Avenue to the bottom.
Ventnor Avenue to the bottom. We didn't list the names of the streets, but that's where they are. This is a corner property, and each of the properties that we have is a corner property, and what we have done is we always locate the clubhouse, and the clubhouse, we call it, that's the place where you pay the fee, the greens fees to go up and you get your club, and then you start the course. We always locate that with relationship to the corner, because we want people to know where to enter the site, and that at that entrance is near a corner and near a crosswalk and not in the center of the block. So in this particular case, the clubhouse is only 16 feet square, and it is 46 feet away from the sidewalk. That gives us an opportunity to have a little platform in front of the clubhouse where people would gather, and then that's where you would pay your fee to play golf, and then right adjacent to the clubhouse is access to the first hole and the staging area for the first hole.
Let me stop you there for a second.
Yes.
So the white on the plan around what you've identified as the clubhouse, that's decking.
That's a deck right there, yes.
And to the right of the plan along the Adams Avenue sidewalk, the long run, would you describe what that is?
Well, we have a couple of requirements that we have to address when we're designing a layout like this. And first off, we have to meet your flood damage prevention ordinance, so that sets our building at a certain height. And then we're required by the Americans with Disability Act that we have to address handicapped access to the property as well, because we have to provide access on the course for handicapped folks to utilize the course.
So the answer to my question is that's a ramp.
That's a ramp. That is a handicapped ramp, and you can see the length of the ramp, as per the scale of the drawing, that when we have our building raised up to meet our flood requirements, we have to then allow the people enough distance on that ramp so that the pitch of the ramp is not over what's required.
The pitch of the ramp meets the ADA requirement.
That's
slope.
correct.
Okay.
1 inch rise in 1 foot of travel.
Now, in terms of the design of this site and its relationship to Ventnor Avenue, and looking at the scale of the development, has the site been designed with that in mind, in terms of the height and the elevations?
Absolutely. I mean, we can never ignore those two elements that we start from. And I have to keep in mind that we're designing this building with rules and regulations that require that our floor level for this clubhouse is at elevation 12, and that we're starting our golf circuit at elevation 12. And then what we really want to do, and in all of our design, is the pond area out towards the street. We'd like that to be as low as possible so that we can create the feeling of a lot of open space there. So what happens is the edge of the pond is only 28 to 30 inches above the sidewalk. So we're starting out at 12 feet or an 8 foot high above grade, and we're going back down to try to make our streetscape as low as possible.
So there's an intentional design element. So as you're walking down the sidewalk, there's not this imposition of this development of golf course right on top of you. It slowly grades back away from the sidewalk.
Absolutely, that's exactly correct. But at the same time, when we talk to you later about our fence height requirements, you'll remember that we're starting out at elevation 12, and I'll take you through the course just to show you how the course progresses.
Let's do that now.
Okay. We start out right there. As I say, there's a queuing area right behind the clubhouse. This is hole number 1. The tee at one end and the hole at the other. We step right onto the tee area of hole number 2, play down to the hole, go into hole number 3, to hole number 4, hole number 5, hole number 6, walk back a little bit, hole number 7, hole number 8, and then into the cave structure, which is about 42 feet back from the street. This is the only area right there that's actually, we have holes on top of the structure. And what happens is we're now down from elevation 12 to elevation 8.2, I think it is, inside the cave in hole number 9. We've addressed our requirements for ADA requirements, which is to provide 9 holes access for handicapped individuals. But what we do here is we come out of hole number 9 and we provide a ramp that takes the individual back up to the clubhouse. What will happen is our course steward at the clubhouse will re-cue the person back in, and they can play another 9 holes. So they get a full 18 holes as a handicapped individual.
How about a non-ADA player?
We have an opportunity now to put steps and various different, a little bit more aggressive elevation changes. So right there, inside the cave structure, we have 3 steps that starts to more aggressively get the site back down to the 30 inches that we'd like to have, or 28 inches out at the street. So we come down to hole number 10, play out into the pond area. We go to hole number 11, which is out near the sidewalk. Hole number 12, back towards the rear of the property and along the Wawa property, and then back into the cave structure to play hole number 13. After you're finished with hole 13, you're going to step outside, and then there's a set of steps that you go to the second floor. And shine this in your eyes. So I'd like to take you over to this drawing.
You're looking now at the site plan, which has been marked Exhibit A1.
That's correct. So this part of the plan here is the second floor that's over top of the cave structure.
What's the height of the second floor?
The second floor is 14 feet above grade level, above the grade level in the floor here. So then at the top of the stair, we'll have hole number 14. Hole number 15, you go across a rope bridge to hole number 16, down some steps into the top part of hole number 17. Now, I want to let you know.
So you play both inside the cave and on top of the cave?
That's correct. And around the edge of the perimeter of the cave, we have a wire mesh fence, so the sides of the cave really don't impose any higher than the 14-foot height limitation. One little hint here on upper part of 17 is that you're probably always going to go into the little cascading water hazard, but your ball's going to end up down here on 17 headed towards the hole. So,
the water feature that's built into the play.
That's correct. Okay. Right next to the stairs that leads you down the side of the cave structure.
Take it to 16, 17, 18, and winding out.
17 is right here, come to 18. 18 is a boat structure. Now the boat structure normally in...
Let me stop you there.
All right.
Is it a pirate ship?
No, not a pirate ship.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry. Explain it
to us. Not a pirate ship.
Explain it to us.
The theme of this course is Congo Falls. So if you've ever watched the movie with Humphrey Bogart, this is going to be the scale of the African Queen. It's a little boat with a steam tank.
Like a little riverboat.
Little riverboat with a little canvas roof over the top, no rigging.
What is the height of that approximately?
You'll have probably 8 feet of headroom underneath the little canvas top.
Is it any higher than the cave, for instance?
Absolutely not. And once again, the boat is sitting in the water. Your feet will probably be at about a foot above the water level. And then the canvas top is about 8 feet above that as you'll walk underneath it. And then what happens is you'll exit the boat with ball in hand. Usually what happens is the ball goes down the hole and you never see it again.
Clown's mouth.
If you make it. Here, you take the ball up, and right there on the deck is called the free game box. And what you do is you drop your ball in the free game box, and there's a bunch of little pins there, and the ball bounces around, and comes down. And if it goes in the chute where it's a free game, a ticket comes out, and you get a free game.
Let's talk about some site-specific
Sure.
Design elements for this particular site. Now, I know certain elements are repeated throughout the different courses.
Yes.
What are the elements that are site-specific to this site in light of the environment that it's located in?
Well, one of the things that we wanted to do was to make sure that the clubhouse was set back far enough. We wanted to make sure that the the cave structure was set back far enough that it made it feel that this was all open space right in front of the clubhouse.
And what you're doing with your pointer is circling the water features that are shown in blue on the plan.
I'm doing that as well as all the landscaping that's around the water features and all the landscaping that's out in front. One thing I didn't mention is that right beside the stairway that goes up to the landing are the bike racks. So we're going to have bike racks for more than 30 bicycles at the site, and would encourage that be a way that folks come down to the site.
Perfect. Talk to us about the pond features. I'm sure there's going to be some concern about the water features by the sidewalk. What are the safety measures that are implemented for that reason?
All of our courses have water features like this, and they are fairly good-sized ponds. Now, we've designed every one of those ponds to not contain more than 15 inches deep of a water at the pond.
What's the 15-inch magic number?
The magic number is that anything more than 15 inches, we have to treat this as a swimming pool.
How do you maintain the level?
There is a pipe which will be right about there, and that pipe is a 6-inch pipe, an invert into the drain, and that drains if we should ever get the water level up to a point where it exceeds 15 inches. That pipe is going to drain the water, and underneath the deck structure we have a drainage ditch or a drainage structure to take that water into and filtrate it into the surrounding area.
And some barrier obstructions to access that from the sidewalk are what? You have a landscape buffer. You have a fence.
There's going to be a fence from approximately the edge of the front of the cave around the front and all the way up to the point where the stairway is. That'll be a 42-inch high mesh fence with wood posts approximately 6 to 7 feet apart.
Let me stop you there for a second. Let's talk about then, we've talked about the site and how it lays out. What about the zoning? I talked about the introduction variances that are necessary. Are there any bulk variances necessary, any setback variances, coverage variances, height variances, things of that nature?
There are no variances required other than the 3 that we've stated, which would be fence height, which would be the freestanding sign, and 2 parking spaces.
The CBD zone, as you mentioned, does not require a front yard setback, and on this property, there are 2 front yard setbacks, one on Ventnor Avenue and one on Adams Avenue.
Yes.
And in light of the fact that it's a corner lot, Margate's ordinance treats a corner lot as having 2 side yards and no rear yard. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the side yards, again, in the CBD zone, don't require any setback. So if there was no coverage control, this site actually could be developed edge to edge.
If there were no impervious coverage control, that's correct.
In light of the fact that there is the multifamily zone to the what I'll call the ocean side, have you implemented some buffer techniques to help buffer the use from the condominium developments up the street?
Yes. Along the, I'll call it the ocean side or east side of our lot, and along the Wawa, which are in the north side of the lot, once again, just to give you an idea of our elevation above grade and where we will be as we're playing these golf holes, we're starting at elevation 12. The elevation of grade down here is 4, so we'll be about 8 feet above grade for the floor level of the clubhouse. Along the back of the property, we're governed by the limit at which we can lower our elevation with the slope of each of these golf holes. And when you have to meet a requirement that for every foot you can only drop 1 inch, you can see that it takes a fair amount of distance to start dropping your elevation. So along the back of the property is where we are asking for a relief from fence height, because our grade is above what the 5-foot fence would be by 3 feet.
Well, let's take those in order when we get toward the end
Sure.
of the general
Okay.
testimony. What I'd like to talk about is the existing conditions at the site at site coverage and drainage. I think that's important for
Okay.
the site and the impact it has with drainage on Ventnor Avenue where
Certainly.
we know we have a problem.
That would be whatever stormwater mitigation we've designed into the project. First off, the bank building has 89.5% lot coverage. And by the photograph that I showed earlier, you'll see that most of all of that is building and parking, and the building and parking drain to the streets. Our site, once we have it developed and post-construction, is going to be at 59.5, 30% less impervious coverage. We are going to handle, and I think it was in Roger's comments and report, that we are going to attend to stormwater runoff with our property because we're able to do that primarily with, we have to put fill material on the site, and we're going to do that with a K4 type fill material. It only has 5% clay in the mix of aggregate, and what that is a perfect substrate to provide for percolation into the soil. So we're going to be filling our site with this type of material. It's a good structural fill. It allows each, and what we're going to do is each of the golf holes drain into the pond. All of the planting area around the site drain into this pervious material that we are using as fill.
And that pervious material or the fill, that actually absorbs
Yes.
water to a certain extent.
I don't know that absorbs, it allows water to occupy the voids that are there between the aggregate.
Okay.
Below that, below what we have at the site is sand. So the percolation will come into our ground fill material and then percolate in the sand.
So we are going from a condition where you have now what's called sheet flow over concrete to the adjoining streets.
Yes,
To Adams Avenue and to Ventnor Avenue. Rain hits it and it rolls right to the street.
that's correct.
As opposed to what is proposed, which is a site that handles its stormwater on site by having it drain either into the ponds or through the surfaces to the sand.
That's correct.
Do you think that will help for instance, a flooding condition at the intersection of Adams Avenue and Ventnor Avenue that exists now in terms of stormwater and rainwater?
I don't know that it'll alleviate it, but it'll certainly reduce the amount of runoff that we have from this site
Precisely.
to the street.
I think everybody will be interested to know how the site lighting is handled.
Okay.
Could you touch upon that, please?
Absolutely. We use a company called RAB Lighting. They have a lighting design team that's in San Francisco. We found that they have been very responsive to our needs and specific needs for these kinds of activities. Over the past 5 to 8 years, maybe 10 years, light emitting diodes or LED lights have worked their way into area lighting. So we have now the ability with LED lighting to be very meticulous with our cutoff lighting, with the use of mirrors in the fixtures, with the use of shades in the fixtures. We can be absolutely precise with where we put light on the site. Originally, we had a lighting plan for the property. My client met with the neighbor.
Neighbor to the ocean side.
Neighbor to the ocean side, up here. And the neighbor said, I'd like to have some windows. I don't mind the fence, but can you put some windows in the fence where my windows are at the house so I can see out onto the golf course? So we did, and you'll see a detail that we have on sheet 2 where we have fence windows there.
So as a result of that, the lighting plan had to be reworked a little bit?
Well, as I say, when we're designing the light for the site, it's very precise, and when we put holes in the fence, the light's going to go through there, so we readjusted the location in our lighting, and now we meet the requirements of the ordinance.
Margate's ordinance does have a standard of what's called light spillage or spillover onto the sidewalk or off property.
Yes.
And how to explain what that means?
Well, they record the amount of foot candles that are projected off the site, and we show then on our plan where foot candles are and where they project. And on the residential area to the east, which is up here, there are 0-foot candles going off-site. And it's by our being able to put the light fixtures along the back property line and face them towards the site, and then put light fixtures on the cave structure here, but lower and face them towards the holes. Just over here, if you would see our cave structure over here, all of the lights on top of the cave structure are bollard-type lights. The posts are only 3 feet tall. They have downward-facing lights, and they're focused right onto the golf surfaces.
So a company that's been retained, like the one you mentioned for this site, actually each individual light is individually designed so that the light it generates doesn't cast foot candles off-site.
Not only that, they are designed because light-emitting diodes are just little pieces of porcelain, and the light is controlled by the number of these diodes that are put into the lighting fixture. So they can control very, very precisely where the light goes on the site.
That's through with individual mirrors, and individual shading on the individual lights.
And
Correct?
they
Is
have,
that right?
yes, that's correct.
Okay,
And there's an average lighting level that we have to maintain on the golf course for safety purposes.
And that's also incorporated into the plan that's been submitted.
That's correct. I
Talking-
can tell you one thing.
Tell these guys, don't tell me.
I
heard
can
it-
tell you
heard it
one
already.
thing. Anybody that's worried about that security light that shines off the property, off the bank property, that will not happen when these light fixtures are installed. At nighttime, that security light seems just to be blinding, but that won't happen.
And the course
when we're
light, the
fixed.
course lights are obviously turned off at the end of play when the course is closed.
That's correct.
For the evening.
Yes.
The only thing thereafter is security lights, which are motion sensor lights.
Yes, just a quick time on that. As Chris said, that no light at the close of business, the lights are turned off. There are motion sensors around the course at various locations, so if anybody should go onto the course or in the cave structure, the lights will go on. And I know that we'll be in touch, if we haven't been already, with the police chief and let them know that if after business hours you see lights on at this facility, somebody's on the course that shouldn't be there.
We'll get to that.
We'll get
Thank
to
you. You mentioned that these uses, the golf course has been developed in other communities near residential zones. Have you had any difficulty that you're aware of, or have you found that the use is in fact can be compatible in a business zone that is adjacent to or near residential properties?
Yes, actually. We have an exhibit of one that we've done, in Sea Isle City.
That'll be the next. in
A4.
line. No, yes, thank you. And that's a overhead photograph of the Adventure Golf facility in Sea Isle. It shows the golf course in the center of the photograph.
Now, this is on Landis Avenue, Sea Isle City. I think one of the things you'll hear when we talk about a little bit more about central business districts and planning techniques in central business districts, what cities, municipalities are finding is that residential uses are intruding into central business districts to the extent that over time, the commercial uses are no longer there, to the extent that there is an attraction to central business zones.
Mr. Howell, as you started that testimony, you were pointing to the plan at the residential uses. That doesn't come across on the record. Could you tell us?
Sure.
Using the exhibit, what you're referring to?
Well, first off, I'd like to tell you about the course a little bit. If you take a look at the course, and I'll just put the rendering back over here. I want to give you some of the similarities that there are in the design and what we found worked. There's the course, the clubhouse, here's a corner, clubhouse. You'll see in this picture, there's the handicap ramp. In our picture over here, clubhouse, there's the corner, handicap ramp.
Those design features have been repeated because you found that they work well.
They work very well. What we have is we have our freestanding sign at the corner. We have the intersection right there. We're attracting people to the entrance of our facility using that freestanding sign. Now, to tell you a little bit about what we have found, at least in Sea Isle.
Now, tell me about first, because it'll help your testimony in that regard. What are the uses around this site?
Residential, 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 residential. We'll tell you. Over here was a commercial ice cream stand. Down here, at this corner, down to the corner that's off the page here, which is down further, and to the boardwalk in Sea Isle was an amusement park. Ferris wheel, roller coaster. The whole block was an amusement park. What happened was that property was sold and now it's all residential.
So the three corners adjacent to the Sea Isle site are all residential?
That's correct.
Okay, and next to the site, to the left of the plan is residential, and to the rear, to the top of the plan, next to the site is residential. The Sea Isle site is surrounded by residential uses.
That's correct.
Okay, and that site's been there for 25 years, it's my understanding?
This was placed here 25 years ago, been in operation, successful operation, with all of these commercial activities around it and part of the Central Business District, which has just kind of melted away in Sea Isle.
So do you then think as a planner that adventure golf or miniature golf course can be compatible in a CBD zone that's adjacent to a residential zone? I'm reading from your outline.
I know, and just to be clear, I've been on a couple of committees, as I mentioned, retained as a consultant to guide them through whatever redevelopment they may need to enhance their central business districts. And what we found was, and this was back from 1980 till recently, what we found is that the first thrust, which I didn't agree with totally, was everybody wanted to change the parking configuration and put street lights and think that that's what all was going to be needed to make and enhance their central business districts. What we have found over years is what you need vitality. You need a variety of uses in your central business district, because what your competition is in the central business district are regional shopping centers. And you can believe that regional shopping centers are in a combat zone for your citizens of your central business district to go where their regional shopping centers is. First sign of this was Searstown. Anybody remember Searstown? Now it's the Boscov Mall, but Searstown. We never thought that Searstown, or nobody ever thought Searstown would be that big of a deal. Now all of a sudden there are strip centers everywhere, and that's all competition for central business districts.
So the idea is to implement uses that make
Complement
people
each
stay here and complement each other.
Complement each other. For instance,
at this particular location, have you found that to be the case if the golf course were approved at this location, and why?
our location?
Yes.
Yes, that's one of the reasons that we feel that a recreational use, which is a permitted use, and an amusement would be very complementary to the other commercial uses. You've got restaurants, you've got retail sales, you've got a lot of variety there, and now with this, it's my opinion that this will not be the attraction. Our project will not be the attraction to the central business district, but it'll be a nice use that will support a family activity once folks come to the central business district. Mom may want to go shopping in a dress shop, and Dad and the kids might want to go play around the golf while that's happening.
You look at this as a strong component of a successful central business district.
Variety variety and energy in your central business district. A reason that people want to go to your central business district is vital to success and longevity for your business districts.
Right. Along with preliminary and final site plan approval, we are asking for 3 variances with this application, correct?
Yes, we are.
Let's talk first about the fence variance that is being requested. You touched on it, I cut you off. Why don't you finish that testimony and why you think the fence variance can be granted?
Okay.
And you can take the CL.
Excuse me.
Board down. And first, Mr. House, show us where the 8-foot fence is proposed as opposed to a 5-foot fence permitted.
Okay. We have an 8-foot fence that's proposed to be along this property line,
That's the ocean side?
ocean side. And we have an 8-foot fence that's proposed to come down to approximately in front of the cave structure, and then stop, and then be a mesh fence, 42 inches tall, around the front of the property.
And that's on the Wawa property line.
That's correct.
And how far back from the Ventnor Avenue property line does the 8 feet fence get
About-
raised to 42 inches?
About, I think it's 45 feet, somewhere around 45 feet.
And tell us briefly, we talking about that, why is the 8-foot fence stopped 40-some feet away from the Ventnor Avenue frontage?
Be happy to. Excuse me. I'm going to put up the overhead photograph of the site. And what you'll see is right there, this is the property. Right here is the entrance and exit from the Wawa onto Ventnor Avenue.
Okay.
So what we want to do we want to stop the fence right at the front of our cave structure and put it at a low transparent fence so that anybody coming out of the, or going in out of the Wawa lot right here won't have any obstructions in seeing traffic coming or going on Ventnor Avenue.
Thank you. Tell us the reason, though, then, for the 8-foot fence height versus the 5-foot at the other location.
Sheet 2, you have details that we've designed for retaining walls around the property. There's going to be a retaining wall required along this property edge and a little shorter one along this property edge. And that is because we are starting out with an elevation that's 8 feet off the ground. So that means that we have to provide a retaining wall at the property line. We've tried to mitigate a little bit the height requirement for our fence by sloping in the buffer area behind the holes. This area right in there, that's a sloped area from where the edge of the holes are down to the top of the retaining wall. But we're also required, when we have a change in elevation from one side to the other of more than 30 inches, we have to provide a guardrail of 42 inches tall. This fence is going to act as a guardrail for protection of folks that are golfers, and it's going to also be a privacy screen for the neighbor adjacent to us on the adjacent property.
When you say a privacy screen, that's because with the elevation of playback at that location, the 5-foot fence would actually be below where people are standing and playing.
About 2 feet below your foot level with a 5-foot fence.
Okay, the 8-foot fence will actually extend above the playing surface.
Still not to the height where your eye level would be as a golfer, but higher than.
How high over the playing surface will the 8-foot fence be?
We have a detail on sheet 2.
42 inches to act as a guardrail.
Not above the playing surface. It's only about 18 inches above the playing surface, the fence, at 8 foot tall.
Oh, because it slopes down before the fence?
Right. So on the other side of the fence, on the neighbor side of the fence will be 8 feet tall.
Got it.
On the player side of the fence will only seem about 18 inches taller than the golf hole.
With respect,
Can you just explain, because
You need to speak into the microphone.
Marcus Swan, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just want to clarify
You can
something.
tilt that.
On the back edge there of the fence where Mel lives, and I want to clarify it for myself, because what I'm hearing is not exactly what I thought I should be hearing, is we cut windows in the fence for him to see, and the current fence height is, I believe, 5'8", and we said it was going to be exactly what it is for him, all his windows. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
The sill of those fence windows, you'll see on the plan, is 5'8", and that is the height of the existing fence. So at the window levels, looking out of his window, the fence height will not be any higher than what is currently there.
And do you believe that fence height is warranted under the circumstances?
In my opinion, I think it is warranted, and it is a safety requirement. I'm certainly the building inspector is not going to allow us to have a change in elevation of more than 30 inches without a guardrail, along with privacy for the neighbor.
That's it, so it'd be a building code requirement as
Yes,
well?
yes.
Talk to us then, Ed, about the parking variance. The requirement for the site is 2 spaces based upon the square footage of the registration building.
That's correct.
We are asking for a variance from providing those 2 spaces, and tell us why you think, in this circumstance, that variance is warranted.
Okay. The proximity of the adjacent building is pretty close to Adams Avenue property line. If I were going to put a parking area on this site, it would be right there. It certainly wouldn't be on Ventnor Avenue to back out onto Ventnor Avenue, and it wouldn't be closer to the to Ventnor Avenue on Adams than would allow me to put the ramp. So the parking area would be right back there somewhere. With the proximity of the building adjacent to us being real close to the property line, I would probably put our curb cut at least 10 feet away from the property line along Adams Avenue. And then I'd have a curb cut that would probably be between 22 and 25 feet wide for 2 cars to pull straight into the lot and park there. So what that does is that restricts parking on street for maybe two parking spaces on Adams Avenue.
What you're saying is the curb cut to service those 2 spaces actually eliminates 2 on-street spaces.
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, there are some limitations that there would be to utilization of those parking spaces. Those parking spaces would be used by folks that would be using the golf course or the employees. Now, the employees for the golf course are probably going to be an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. 18-year-old to work in the clubhouse, a 15-year-old to monitor the course. Now, our experience in these other locations is these are local kids that are going to be working here, and they come to the site on their bicycles, and they'll park their bicycles in the parking area right there. Now, when we're not in operation, there's not going to be anybody parking in those spots, and there's not going to be anybody parking on the street because it's a curb cut. You're prohibited from blocking curb cuts. So we're looking at our 2 parking spaces on site, taking away 2 parking spaces on the street, and there being conditions for those 2 parking spaces on site to be used by only the people that are using the golf course.
Do you is there a safety factor that you have thought about?
I'm going to get to that. Going to get to that. So the thought factor was, if we're giving up 2 spaces on the street and we're parking 2 spaces on the site, is it better and safer if we're not backing out across the sidewalk frequently, or people coming down from the beach or coming down Adams Avenue towards this, and that be a safety problem? Is it better for us to request a variance for parking and put 2 spaces that we can count on, that will have no obligation, the public can use that at any time? The other thing is that we have 2 curb cuts on Ventnor that we're going to be closing up, so there's a possibility that the net gain for this project would be 4 on-street parking spaces rather than having 2 parking spaces on site that are controlled by the activity that we're putting there. So I think it's a benefit for your consideration, and that benefit would probably outweigh the detriment that we're providing 4 on-street parking spaces where 2 off-street are required.
And not to be misunderstood, the site could be developed with 2 on-site spaces. I mean,
Yes.
there's room for it.
Yes.
Is it a factor when the play of golf is about an hour per round, and for instance, if players were using those spaces, you would have those cars traversing the sidewalk conceivably every hour or more?
Frequently,
so?
yes. Okay. And not both at the same time. They would, yes.
Exactly. Talk to us now about the freestanding sign at the corner and why you believe that is warranted, and I will hand out to the board renderings of the sign.
Understand, the ordinance says is that we are required for, or allowed for our building of 16 feet wide to have a 35 square foot sign. And the ordinance says it has to be building mounted. It has to be mounted on the face of our building. Keeping in mind that the ordinance says that we have 0 front yard setback along Ventnor Avenue, that means that the entire 125 feet of our property could have signage all the way across it. What we have is a building that's 46 feet back from the sidewalk, that's only 16 feet wide, that the entire front of the building is open. I'm showing you here the roll-up door that is above our counter, so when the building is open, the door is up. So there's really no place to put the sign on the building, mounted sign. But what we have found is, and one of the reasons why we like to build our clubhouses and entrance close to the corner, is that when we put a freestanding sign at the corner, which is what we're proposing, that sign is a direction, it's a directional tool for pedestrians, for motorists, for bicyclists, that this is the entrance to our facility. Come to the corner and come across the crosswalk. And one of the things, excuse me. One of the things I think it's a very good reference point for you is that's right there where our sign is, and that's the crosswalk, and that's the crosswalk across Adams. We want to draw people's attention for safety with this freestanding sign to the point that they're going to enter and start to play golf.
And when you look at the way Cross Adams Avenue has been developed on the ocean side, you've got buildings right up to the corner. Will the sign provide advance notification for motorists on Ventnor Avenue of the location of the site?
Yes.
Before they're on top of the site?
Coming north on Ventnor Avenue, if the only sign were on the front of our building, which was well, actually what we have is,
I'm open. Almost done. That's another exhibit, Mr. Manos. 5?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, A5.
And the sign renderings I gave you can be A6.
A6, got it.
we've superimposed the rendered site plan onto the chart or photograph of the vicinity. So our sign is right there, proposed to be right there. Our clubhouse is right there, and with the deck in front of it. And that's the side, that's the crosswalk. What we're saying to the public is, when you're coming to this facility, here's where the entrance is, and it's right adjacent to crosswalks in both directions. And for safety purposes, we would recommend, or your consideration, for granting a freestanding sign. Keeping in mind that one of the reasons that there is only building-mounted signs allowed in the ordinance might be that the buildings are on the property line with 0 setbacks in the front, and there's no place to put a freestanding sign other than in the right-of-way.
So in this instance, the ordinance actually works against this type of development, with the sign really serving no purpose, being up Adams Avenue.
That's correct.
Okay.
And once again, trying to keep all of this as open and low-key size, low development in front.
It's been pointed out, Mr. Howell, that the size of the sign at 52 square feet per side requires a variance. Can you touch upon the necessity for that sign size in relation to the safety concerns that you mentioned?
52 square feet was not an arbitrary number. 52 square feet on a corner lot is a 35-foot sign on the front, and we are permitted a side sign on Adams Avenue of half of what is permitted on the front. So that's 17.5 square feet. So the 52.5 square feet is the side of signage that we would have on our clubhouse, with a sign facing Ventnor and a sign facing Adams. So that's the limitation that put us at 52 square feet as being a reasonable size sign for that location.
And do you think that size of that sign is warranted to assist in the safety considerations that you mentioned?
Certainly any freestanding sign there that alerts the pedestrians, probably more than vehicle traffic, pedestrians, that this is where you need to cross the street. Because just down the street, as you see here, we have the parking lot, and then pedestrians probably crossing right in the middle of the block to the restaurant. We have an opportunity here with design at the beginning of a project to put features on the site that will encourage safety on the site.
You're aware as a professional planner, Mr. Howell, that in order to justify the variances, we have to demonstrate that the proposed plan of development and the variances included in that proposed plan advance certain purposes or any purposes of the municipal land use law.
That's correct.
Have you looked at that?
I have.
Do you find that this plan, with the variances included as a whole, advances one or more purposes of the municipal land use law?
I have, and I've done that evaluation. Certainly, and these are the purpose, municipal land use law has items in there as the purpose for zoning. And as a planner and as an architect, I should be considering these when I'm designing the project. And for development to promote general safety and welfare is the first item there. And for us, I think that fits very nicely for the reason why we're suggesting you consider a freestanding sign. The second item would be safety from fire and flood.
Let me stop you for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Talk to me about promotion of the general welfare. The fact that this miniature golf course at that location, how do you believe that promotes the general welfare should the board grant it?
Well, I know that the zoning and the changes to zoning really are concentrating on maintaining the vitality of the central business district. And I think the general welfare is that when you have a community with a central business district, you want to maintain that. The variety of different uses, certainly this is a permitted use, and including this as a variety of use would be an attraction and contribute to the general welfare of your central business district.
Putting in this use that is not there now, recreational use, do you believe that will help the other businesses in the area, help their business and promote the success of other businesses?
Well, as I said before, this is probably not the reason people are coming to the downtown business district, but it's a reason that's considered as part of, well, we're going to go shopping. Well, why don't we go downtown rather than going offshore? So I think that this is an attraction that people won't come here to play golf, but they will play golf when they're downtown, and hey, wasn't that fun?
Does the miniature golf course fill a need in a town that actually zones for recreational uses where none exist?
It does. There's a variety of different recreational uses. I don't know that a batting cage would be there. I don't know that a water slide would be something that we would suggest. There are other recreational uses. This is a low-key recreational use miniature golf facility, and I think it would be a good addition to the central business.
How about the purpose of the act that speaks to preserving light, air, and open space? Do you think the development as proposed advances that purpose of the act?
Well, one of the things that we feel is important in the design is that people are able to see what's going on the property. That's one of the reasons why we designed the front of the property to have our water features, the waterfalls, the water cascading down in hole number 17, and the pond there with the greens in the middle of it. They'll see people using the facility and having fun at this location, and it'll be a plus.
Overall height, is it well within what's permitted in the zone or lower?
Absolutely. It's a lot lower. As I said, we could have a building that was 34 feet tall on Ventnor Avenue at the front property line. And our clubhouse is 15 feet tall, but it is measured from elevation 12, which is the floor level and where everybody measures buildings.
There is a water tower on site. What is the height of that and what's the purpose of it?
The purpose of that is just a feature to move water around the property. We find that during the summer months, this location will probably be 5 to 7 degrees cooler than other locations downtown, just by the movement and pushing water around in the on the waterfalls and so forth in the mist. So the water tower just is simply a design feature on the site as an element of interest.
And what's the height of it?
I think the height was 14 feet above elevation 12. 17 feet?
There's a purpose of the act which speaks to providing sufficient space and appropriate locations for appropriate uses.
Correct.
Do you believe this plan advances that purpose of the act?
I do, yes.
And why is that?
Well, once again, variety of various uses in your business district is a good thing, and I think that this recreational use suits that purpose.
And the fact that it's a permitted use in the zone.
It's a recreational and an amusement is a permitted use, yes.
How about the promotion of a desirable visual environment through creative design techniques?
Well, I hope that you'd feel that, that this would be with all of the landscaping that we're providing on site. Excuse me once again. Get back to. With all of the landscaping that we're providing around the site and in front of the site.
The rendered site plan?
Yes, rendered site plan.
Go ahead.
Sorry. We feel that, that the golf course provides the interest. The building is a low-key structure. It's not imposing. I think that you'd think that it was a nice addition. The waterfalls. Let me discuss the waterfalls a little bit if I can.
You can just touch upon where those water features are.
Waterfall is at the end of the cave structure here, across the middle, and right there. And when you think of a waterfall, this is not Niagara Falls. This is a little retention pond up at the top on the second level, and it's an infinity edge type waterfall where at any given time there's about a half of an inch of water spilling over the edge, and it doesn't create a lot of noise when it's for the waterfall.
One of the purposes of the act that has been recognized is compliance with local ordinances, standards, and laws. Now, the site does in fact meet the federal, state, and local flood hazard ordinance.
That's correct.
It is ADA compliant.
Yes.
Thank you. Speak to me about the negative criteria, why you believe the variances can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. And I need you to be a little bit specific in that regard with respect to the use and how it fits in with the zoning ordinance.
With regard to parking, once again, we are suggesting that having on-site or off-site parking, unregulated, at the same amount of parking that we would have on-site is probably better for the city than having controlled parking on-site. As far as the fence is concerned, I feel that there's no detrimental impact. The applicant has met with the owner of the property. We have explained to them what it is that we're doing. They have conveyed to us what they would prefer. We have made those adjustments. I don't think there's any negative impact for the fence height. The sign certainly meets the criteria. I think there's a benefit for allowing the public to know where the entrance to the property is for a freestanding sign.
Does the fact that the site complies with all of the bulk standards for the zone and is a permitted use in the zone, does that help in your analysis of whether the variances can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the zone plan and the zoning ordinance?
Yes, we've looked very carefully at all of the design features and felt that the variances were reasonable requests and had no detrimental effect as far as the zoning plan and zoning ordinance.
And in terms of other permitted uses that could be developed on the site, as we had discussed, do you believe this use is a less intense use on an annual basis?
Absolutely.
Than what you spoke of before?
One of the features for this project is that it's a seasonal use, and during the winter months, it'll be closed. I mean, steps are taken to close the property down to drain the pond, and there will be no activity at this facility during the winter months. Where there would be a lot of traffic onto Adams Avenue, because that's probably where you would where we would have our driveway, and for having retail uses and with the residential uses above.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Mr. Benevento.
Chris?
Yes.
I'm sorry, could we just get clarity on the sign? Is it a mirror image on both sides?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And it is it is not plastic internally illuminated, I'm sorry. It is sandblasted with externally lit, sandblasted wood externally lit. So it is not as bright as it would appear on that rendering. Mark, we're going to run through this quickly. Your position with Adventure Golf South, please introduce yourself to the board and tell them why you're here.
How you doing? I'm Mark Benevento. I'm president of Adventure Golf South. I've been in the golf business for over 30 years. I've been in town here. I actually lived at 14 South Adams Avenue 25 years ago. I actually built 1416 South Adams Avenue. I used to live on Jefferson Avenue as well, so I know the area quite well. And it's a lovely, lovely town, and we'd love to have one of these mini golf courses in your community. It's family fun, clean entertainment.
Talk to us a little bit. You have other courses developed in other local coastal towns?
Yes, we have them in Ocean City, we have them in Avalon and Sea Isle, and our mini golf courses, they have the best of the press each year, and one of our mini golf courses has won or the top 3 spots for the last 20 years. So we do build the best mini golf courses in South Jersey, not by my standards, by our customers.
And as Mr. Howell had testified to, this site is designed to be site-specific, understanding that it is in a zone, a central business district adjacent to a residential zone, a multifamily zone.
Correct. We have them other locations as well. Avalon is very similar. There's restaurants downtown, there's stores downtown, and a typical day for our customer, and I think it'll be similar here in town, is that they would go to the beach, they would go back home, clean up, look for a bite to eat, either go out or stay at home, come out and play some mini golf, and then grab an ice cream.
What are the hours of operation generally?
Generally, they're different at different locations, but I believe this one will be approximately 9 a.m. and take the last customer approximately 11 p.m.
Chris, could you speak into the microphone, please?
Yes, sir.
Well, there's 2 microphones.
With respect to, if play stops at 11 o'clock, what time would the course be closed and lights be out?
It should be by midnight.
And lights are turned off after that, so this course is dark at night?
Yes.
How long does a round of golf take generally?
It depends how busy it is, but normally about an hour.
Have you found that your other sites that are in communities that are adjacent to residential zones, are they compatible? Do they work well? Obviously, you wouldn't be there if they didn't work.
That's correct. We've been down in Avalon for, I think, 26 years. We've been in Sea Isle City for 24 or 25 years, and been in Ocean City for over 30 years.
Have you reached out to the neighbors, and if so, tell us about that interaction?
I gave my best effort to walk the blocks, knock on the doors. I happened to meet with a few neighbors, and my goal was just to share with them what our plans were and make sure that they have the facts and they can make a decision based on the facts. And yes, I did meet with Mel behind us and Mr. Duncan across the street and Lenny across the street, and I met with neighbors. I know it's the winter time and there's not a lot of neighbors here, but I knocked on as many doors as I could.
And I'm jumping around a bit here. I just want to cover a couple things in concluding. The site will have restroom available to patrons.
Yes.
There will be, there's not a snack bar on site, as had been previously proposed. There just will be water available to players.
Yes, we're not going to, we want to complement the existing businesses, and our goal is just to have maybe some water on the site, and we don't even want to have soda because we don't really want to see the soda spilt on the golf course and then try to clean that up. So we'll just have water on site and let the customers go elsewhere for refreshments.
So in terms of trash, then, you'll have water bottles, plastic bottles, and scorecards.
That's it. No.
Mark, just to conclude now, you know that we're requesting a parking variance. In your experience, the typical patron in the shore communities, how do they arrive at the site?
Well, we have a location in Sea Isle City with no parking. We have a location in Avalon with, I think it's 4 parking spaces. It may be 5. And Ocean City with 3. Ocean City, it's on 9th Street with 3 spots. I mean, we're not going to build a facility like this if we really believe that we need the parking and we are not a complementary use. So I believe it works very, very well in this community. You have wonderful restaurants in town, you have wonderful ice cream parlors in town, wonderful shops in town, and I believe it'll complement all those businesses.
And you find that the majority of the users are walk-up users or bicycle?
That is correct. And that the two parking spaces we vacillated on this a lot is to just provide 2 spots on site. But after we discussed the safety issues of that car going back and forth over that sidewalk, those 2 cars going back and forth over the sidewalk, and if you just close the curb cut and create those 2 parking spaces, we believe it's a lot safer.
Thank you, Mr. Benevento. Thank you, members of the board. That's
Thank
my
you.
case in chief.
Chris, is it 2 total or 3 total curb cuts that we're gaining?
3 total curb cuts being closed. We look at it as the addition of probably 4 on-street spaces. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Chris
Yes.
and Ed. The additional variance that I identified was a sign height of 3 feet.
The adjustment of the minimum height, we can certainly pick up the bottom of the sign to 10.
It's this portion here.
Okay.
It's supposed to be 3 feet, basically, because it's supposed to be a built-in mounted sign. So you need a variance for that.
We would incorporate the testimony we've given in terms of the size of
I
the
agree with
sign.
that. I think you met the proofs, but I just
Okay.
want to identify the additional variances.
I'm okay with that.
The other one, again, based on the sign being built-in mounted, this dimension here is supposed to be 10 foot.
We can pick up the 2 feet.
You want to keep it 8 foot and get a variance for it, or?
I'd rather pick up the 2 feet and have it clear.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed, right here. What's the pump room, finished floor pump room?
All of the equipment will be at elevation 12.
Right.
The pump room actually is a pipe that goes down into a well that we create. The water goes into this area and sucks it out. So all the equipment will be above elevation 12.
Okay.
Yes.
Has come out with opinions on various other projects, which would indicate that you might need 2 restrooms here. I think you ought to check with the local plumbing inspector.
Okay.
Get a reading from him on that. These mesh fences, how are they going to meet the horizontal loadings required?
We have a 1-inch rope that is the top and bottom rail that's woven through the fence. And the fence is a parachute cord fence, which will provide the 100 pounds that we need for the loading on the fence.
Okay, how about the, these, I forget what you call them, the rope bridges?
Yes.
Are they stable or are they going to?
They are steel. The cables on the rope bridge are 1-inch steel cables, steel bridge cables. And they feed back into our concrete structure and are anchored to masses of concrete in our concrete structure that are probably more than a cubic yard and a half of concrete at the end of each one of those
But
cables.
do they sway?
They do not sway.
Okay, good.
Actually, we have been at the site when we've had 3 or 4 kids in the middle of that jumping up and down, and that did not move. About the rope bridge, whether it moves at all.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, it moves a little bit, but not the point where it's bouncing.
I apologize. No, we have different styles in different locations, but the rope bridges that we have been building are used cable, and they do bounce a little bit. So
Better talk that over with Mr. Galantino.
Okay.
I think. And I don't know who this should go to, but everything was going fine until you showed me this. That gorilla's got to go. I'm sorry. You're going to lose me with that.
Mr. Balin said that earlier as well.
Just to kind of help the board, just to,
Yeah,
that's what I
absolutely.
do.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And that'll alleviate or minimize some of the height variance that's being requested as well. unless we raise it to improve visibility under it, but
That'll be fine. Yes, you can remove the monkey if you wish.
Clem, did you see what Despina showed?
Yes.
That's
Yes,
Clem? Despina showed it first.
What are the actual months you're going to operate? May, June, July, September?
Well, we're not exactly sure what the business will handle here, but locations similar, we would open up weekends in the spring. Then when we get to the summer, we would open up full-time. And then fall, we would go back to weekends and then close it up.
Rich, if we could just, I don't know if you're the right person to ask, if we can clarify, since you've already conceded to removing the gorilla, I don't know if we're going to raise it or what you're going to recommend, if you're going to raise the actual sign or leave it at that height, just so it's clarified for the board.
What we talked about is the bottom of the sign will come up 2 feet.
Okay.
And we can enter your exhibit into the record showing generally how the gorilla will be removed from the graphic.
Still gonna be hot. So you're still gonna be 14 feet to the top.
Yes.
Turn your microphone on, Mike, please. Despina, push it.
10 foot plus 4 feet would be 14 feet to the top of the sign. You wanted 16 feet, you said? I don't think
I don't
14.
know, the Tipsy Taco sign across the street's about 30 feet in the air. I mean, I said the Tipsy Taco sign across the street's about 30 feet in the air. You know, I mean.
Yeah, we'll comply with the
One
ordinance.
at a time, please.
We'll comply with the ordinance. The bottom edge of the sign will be 10 feet as the minimum required.
Minimum's 10, right?
Right.
Under the ordinance.
Right. And we understand it's freestanding sign. We want to comply as best possible. The size of the sign with the elimination of the gorilla, if we would like to put some greenery, or something up there, just to give it a little bit of, something like that, with no gorilla, no animals, just some leaves or branches, something like that. We will, we'll work with Roger on that, if that's okay.
You'd need more than 4 feet to do that? Would 5 feet be okay, or?
Oh, no, whatever the 52 square feet would allow, we would rework it so it just says Congo Falls Miniature Golf and with no gorilla.
Well, it doesn't have to be 52 feet when you're getting rid of all those feet. Do you
Well,
want to make it?
that's another issue that hadn't been brought up. Give me some direction in that regard.
I just brought that up. I'm asking, would you like another foot and you'll still be under the 52 feet?
Removing the gorilla is a reduction of 13 square feet per side,
That brings it down to right to about
39 per side.
And that's that with the 4 feet?
Mr.
That's
Benevento,
the 4 feet.
Mr. Benevento gives that the okay, Mr. Patterson.
4 feet.
Removing the 13 square foot gorilla. So that brings down to 39 square feet
Per side.
per side. Is that okay? All right? Very good, thank you. Thank you very much.
And that'll give you 4 feet to work with? Is that what we're
No, it's the square footage, I guess they're going with. So 39 square feet.
Wow. You still gotta be a certain height too, so.
Is there any other questions or comments from the board? Before we have public portion, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Take your seats, we're going to start the meeting again.
We're recording.
I guess some of the younger people see if some.
We're back in session. We are going to open it for public portion. Before we do that, first, if there's any young kids here, I'm going to let them speak first. It's getting late. We're here tonight to vote on 3 variances. The parking variance from 2 spaces to none, a height variance on the fence from 5 feet to 8 feet, and a freestanding sign. And site plan approval. We have nothing else that not that we want to talk about that this planning board has control over. So I would like your comments specifically for or against, I don't care, but address the issues that we have control over. There's also a lot of people here tonight. I would suggest try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Nobody's going to stop you when you go 4 minutes or whatever. But we had a meeting last week where someone spoke for half an hour. We let everybody be heard. Also, if your point's already been made, I welcome you to come up and just say you agree that you're for it or against it for the previously stated agreements. Just for the benefit of all of us that we're not sitting here repeating everything. So if there's anyone of a school age that would like to speak, if not, we'll move on to anyone else and just work your way up. Okay, so take it upon yourselves, come up if you want to speak, and come on. Oh, one other thing, and we have a problem with this all the time. You're an attorney, you don't need to be sworn in. You come up and you state your name and address, and then everybody just starts going on from there. You state your name and your address, then you get sworn in, then you can say whatever you want. Okay, come on.
Good evening. Alice Cupiolo, 1364 Delcia Drive in Deptford, New Jersey, 08096. I've heard a lot of changes tonight. Were there amendments to this this project? Anything other than this sign that were changed?
No.
Amendments as far as what?
As far as the original proposed, I heard the first gentleman come up and say, well, that's been amended. That's been changed. Originally it was food and now it's just water.
No, that was a different project in a different area a year ago or 10 years ago.
My understanding is the plans that have been on file from 10 days prior to the hearing are the plans that haven't changed since, which
Except the sign, is that correct?
Has been made smaller.
Which has been made smaller during the course of the hearing, sure.
But we still don't know what it looks like? I apologize. I thought I heard some talk about plants or something on the top of it. So even though there are changes, we don't need to give people notice about the changes?
These are what I would consider minor changes that have come up during the course of the hearing, which have addressed some of the concerns of the board and have made the sign smaller.
Okay. So what you're saying is it doesn't require notice to the public?
No. What they've done tonight so far, no. They noticed for the application, they had plans on file, and they have, if anything, made their sign smaller to address some of the concerns of the board. So does that require further notice? No, it does not.
Okay. When the gentleman was speaking, I believe it was the attorney for them, even by his own admissions, he spoke of traffic problems. He wants the sign on the corner because of the traffic problems. People are going to be stopping in traffic on Ventnor Avenue. It's going to cause additional problems for traffic.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt because that's not what I said. It's not what I said. What I said is...
Krista, take the microphone.
No,
I'll share. She has that mic. You take the other mic.
What I said was it should help prevent traffic problems because there are pedestrians in that street who cross for the restaurants.
Right.
We think the sign will help to prevent traffic problems, not because there are traffic problems.
Well,
is what I said.
I beg to differ with you, but...
That's fine.
Okay. So even by his own admissions, there were already traffic problems. Now you're going to have this additional traffic. Can you tell me, did they touch on how many patrons?
I just want to interrupt you. I'm not trying to be combative, but you are now a witness. Are we agreeing on that as a property owner, or are you speaking as an attorney?
I am... I'll speak as a property owner.
Yeah,
Sure.
and that's fine. I just got to swear you in, and we know your name, Alice Cupiolo, and you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And the only reason I say that, if you have a witness to question, that's fine as an attorney. But if you're speaking, you're really testifying, and they have the right to cross-examine you and stuff like that. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Sure. Can you tell me, did you
Into the microphone, please.
Did you ask them how many patrons usually do they have in their establishments per day?
No.
Do we think we want to know that? How many people are going to be walking the streets? How many cars do we anticipate coming up and down the street? What kind of a load do we anticipate this bringing to the community? I know you said that there are going to be mostly people walking, but we don't know that. Can you tell me, sir, how many? I guess it's not you, probably the president. How many people are normally at these establishments per day?
We don't have a count per day of, we would hope it would be very successful. But we can't give you a count based upon a site that it doesn't exist yet. So we don't know. We hope it's successful. We hope there are a lot of people.
You can tell us how many are in
If I knew
one
that,
of the other locations.
If I knew that, but that's not relevant to this location. And it's not a requirement of the ordinance that we provide the number of patrons per day. It's not something that's required.
Well, how many patrons do you estimate per week?
Not something that's required by ordinance, nor do we know the answer to the question. It would be speculation, and I don't want to speculate.
I think part of the problem is
I think you're arguing with me, and I'm telling you, we don't know the number, and we can't give it to you. It's not required to be provided either.
Well, I mean, you're.
Jimmy, would the fire marshal dictate how many people can be on the site at one time? Okay.
So,
Can we speak into microphones?
yeah. So as far as the runoff and I was wondering what are the chemicals that are kept in the ponds?
Mr. Howe, could you please respond to the young lady's questions?
The chemicals that normally associated with the swimming pool, just to keep algae growth abated. The water is being circulated, so it'd be
Right.
similar chemicals.
So when they run off, they're going to run what, into the street, into the sewer, into
Now
the
they run
ocean?
into a drainage system that we have. Now, I will tell you this, that the chemicals are not as strong as they would be in a pool.
Do you have you submitted what those chemicals are?
No.
And do you have any concern at all as far as golf balls and trash in the community?
What's the relationship between golf balls and trash?
Well, the golf balls being thrown off the, I guess it's a 2-foot fence that you're having on the back, so the golf balls and trash being thrown off the property?
We have a course intended to take care of wayward balls. And trash, as we addressed, is limited to the scorecards and water bottles, which we believe we can maintain on-site without being a hindrance to the surrounding neighborhood.
Also, there are 2 trash cans that are right adjacent to the queuing area for hole number 1. And there's a requirement that the folks not bring anything other than a water bottle onto the course.
Okay, and just one last question. The 4-foot fence, when you're pulling out of the Wawa parking lot, do you think that provides sufficient view for the people pulling out and the people coming down Ventnor Avenue?
That's essentially a see-through fence being mesh netting with a rope standard across the top. It's almost, I'd say 95% translucent. Transparent.
That'll also be subject to Atlantic County Planning Board approval.
And just one other thing, this sign itself, if they allow you to have this sign, it's going to be a slippery slope. Everybody's going to want to have a freestanding sign now.
Case by case.
And that's a appropriate reaction, but the law tells us, and Mr. Manis would tell us, that every site is viewed as individually. A precedent is not something that the board should consider, nor that is taken into consideration during their deliberation.
But once it's done, it's going to be done. Everybody's going to want a freestanding sign.
Well, you may say that, but this board does not consider precedents, and we haven't considered precedents, so.
Thank you.
Next. Name and address, please.
Steve Baglivo. I have a few addresses here in town, but my main address is 9600 Atlantic Avenue, Unit 713.
And Mr. Baglivo, do you swear from the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I just wanted to bring to this board's attention that I've recently acquired 9402 Ventnor Avenue, which is commonly known as the Breakfast Club, along with 9411 through 17, which is across the street past Johnny's Cafe. In the process of my acquiring this location of the Breakfast Club, the current tenant's lease ends at the end of December. One of their concerns are that this new facility is developed. In the event that it is not, they most likely will not be renewing their lease, only because they feel they need a new influx of something different, something new. They have plans themselves of changing their menu around a little bit to help them along with this type of client if this is approved. The other thing I'd like to add in reference to the parking related issues, if I think almost all of us, I can't say for sure, but I know I do, I visit the Margate Dairy Bar frequently, living down the street, and they do have the best burgers in the country as far as I'm concerned. As I'm walking though from my boardwalk or beach location down to the dairy bar, one of the things that's always concerning are those vehicles pulling across the sidewalk and backing out of the sidewalk. Even when I turn off of Ventnor Avenue up the street to go to 9600 to my own home, it's an issue with just the cars backing in and out. There's no question from living here and seeing it myself that on-street parking would be much better or more favorable than on-site. That's why I have like to
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. Name and address, please.
Hello, Yanni Galanos, 9213 Ventnor Avenue. I'm the owner across the surf shop and, you know, the little shopping center. I personally
Yanni,
want to...
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the
Yes,
whole truth,
I
nothing
do.
but the truth?
I'm sorry, I'm Greek. I didn't know.
Won't hold that against you.
So I personally want to thank Mr. Benevento, just even thinking, invest in our city. I have children. I live in the city 30 years, and I think this is going to be the best thing ever for our block. Not because I have the ice cream place right next to it, but because it will be. As far as the people that are opposed to this, I just want to simply respectfully tell them that would you rather see a 40-foot building with 6 condominiums and a bunch of unattended 14-year-old kids drinking beer all night long? Thank you.
Thank you. Name and address, please.
My name is Ed Berger. My residence is at 9402 Amherst Avenue.
Mr. Berger, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'm here both to speak as a full-time resident of Margate and also as the president of Margate Business Association, which I've had the pleasure of serving as over the course of the last 8 years. Nobody else would run. The old golf course, mini golf course, was right in my backyard. If you recall, it was legitimately outside my kitchen window, and my family and I enjoyed it thoroughly for very many years, for as long as we were down there, until a time came along where it was sold, and we understand the economics of why it was sold. There are 3 townhomes there now. I was a strong advocate when the golf course originally was discussed on the other end of town, because I felt that the business community, and on behalf of the business community, there was a real need for a resurgence of new street traffic along through our business districts, whether it's the business district that's closer to Ventnor or the one that's closer to Longport. I'm actually happier that the one earlier wasn't approved, because I believe this is a fairly superior site to the one that was there before. I think that's going to help both the business district in the area, and I also believe that the 3 variances that are being asked for, first, the parking one, I agree completely that taking the curb cuts away as opposed to having cars crossing the sidewalk is a positive for the area. The fence in the back, I think, is simply a technical variance that's based on the board's opinion of whether or not it's a good idea or not. It doesn't have a major impact on the business community or as me as a resident at all. I kind of like the monkey, you know. I mean, it's okay, you know. Sorry, Clem. No, it's you and me, babe. We're gonna go. So I kind of like the monkey, but I understand it. I understand the concerns about it, and I think that the project's willingness to make the alteration in the advertising is just a wonderful indication of how flexible that they would be in the future in working with not only the community that they're now going to be a full-time part of, but also you know, the neighborhood as well. So For those that are concerned that live in the immediate area, that the golf course is going to be an eyesore for them or a problem for them, I assure you, based on my own experience of living next to one, that it is not. I'm very happy that it's in our commercial district because I certainly believe and know from discussing with the businesses in the area, and I took a straw poll at the NBA Christmas party the other night about this, and every business owner I spoke to was in favor of it. Having this as your neighbor is going to be a good thing for your community, and I very much look forward to taking my family there for a little clean fun in town. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your attention.
Name and address, please.
Jay Weinberg, 8207 Bayshore
Hey,
Drive.
Jay.
I am in full support of
Jay,
all.
hold on.
Oh,
Swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
yes, Leo.
Thank you.
I am in full support of all three of the variances. I am a full-time resident of Margate, and I have been for the past 40 years. I have two young children, one of whom is in kindergarten and another one who is in preschool, who will live here for a while, if not forever. And I think this golf course is going to be terrific for them, for the kids that live here, for the kids that come here, and also for the businesses that are in the community. Over time, we've lost some of our businesses in the area, and I think this is going to be great to bring people back. And with that, I can't wait to bring my 6-year-old and 3-year-old golfing this summer.
Jay, last time we met, we both had a lot more hair.
Rich.
What? It was.
Hi.
Name and address, please.
Jill Cork, 9400 Atlantic, which is at the corner of Adams Avenue, right down the street. I'm a little concerned that...
Sworn in, please.
I'm sorry, your last name, Port?
Cork,
And do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
yes.
Thank you.
I'm a little concerned about two things. First of all, that the last person who will be allowed entry, which they stated is 11 p.m., and they said it usually takes an hour to finish. So there could be people that are slow. This could be open way past midnight. I feel that's a little late for a neighborhood with traffic coming, with all that extra traffic coming down Adams Avenue. I didn't realize the entrance would be on Adams Avenue. Every other business in the business district has their entrance on Ventnor Avenue, not on the side street.
The entrance is on Ventnor Avenue.
Well, they said the clubhouse is on Adams Avenue, which is
The
where...
entrance is on Ventnor Avenue. You could go look right over there and look at the sign.
So you are walking into the clubhouse through Ventnor Avenue.
Would you show her?
Okay.
The only thing that's on the side is the handicap.
Okay. But, so how late at night could this stay open till with the lights? Because it is a neighborhood. There are a lot of people. It's densely populated at Adams Avenue. And will there be music?
I can.
Microphone, please.
As I mentioned during the presentation, the speakers that we're using are low speakers mounted at grade level with very directional speaker systems that have an angle of distribution that we can control, so that we can make sure that all of the low-level music that would be played is going to be played towards the golf holes and not towards the neighborhoods.
Will it be played at high decibels?
No.
And then what time do you think the last patron will be out at night?
Well, if I'm speaking out of turn, let me know, Mark, but what happens with the last patron going on the course at 11 o'clock is the two people that are in charge of the golf hole start cleaning the golf course after them. So they'll be right behind them, assisting that they play through the course, that we could try our best to have this closed at midnight or sooner.
Is there any way this could close at 10 o'clock at night?
They would have to change
There
their...
is a curfew in Margate. There is a curfew, and how will that affect this?
Not everybody that's, I like to play miniature golf. You know what I'm saying? What time are the bars allowed to be open till at night, like Johnny's and Tipsy Tacos and stuff like that? Huh? 3:30. So you have bars with people, inebriated people coming down the street at 2, 3 at night. I mean, are we gonna make them close earlier too?
Whenever.
What time does the dairy bar close?
I need you to
I don't
speak
know.
into microphones, please.
I believe that the bars are allowed to be open as late
Till
as
4.
4 a.m.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, 1 minute.
Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you very much. Please state your name and address, please.
My name is Christopher Clayton. I live at 1 Clayton Court in Egg Harbor Township. I'm ready to be sworn in.
Thank you.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I also own a small ice cream establishment here in town known as the Margate Dairy Bar and Burger. We've been around for about 65 years, and I'm very familiar with standing before this board years ago after the hurricane when we had to try to rebuild out of the ashes. My family is originally from East Falls area. We had our house in Avalon at the shore. My great-grandmother bought a house built on shore in 1902. I watched Jaws in a movie theater over the water in Avalon that's no longer there. And I played skee-ball in a place that's no longer there. And I did pinball in a place that's no longer there. And I watched the full-time residents move out of Avalon because there was no longer anything there. I did have concerns when I came into this meeting. I do know of Mr. Benevetto. I represent in my real job a lot of clients in Ocean City, the Gillians, the Mancos, and everything. And I've watched Mr. Benevetto with his golf courses. I don't know him personally, so I have no skin in the game. I did have concerns. All my concerns were met tonight. I know that first off, we're supposed to be here to discuss the variances. So, you know, I think that appropriate time went into trying to make sure that changes were made to make the neighbors feel comfortable. I know in my own block, you know, we get a few people on weekends, and it's a little hard to control them. So I certainly do understand the neighbors' concerns, and I would hope Mr. Benevetto would try to, you know, quickly try to learn the community and see what's going on there. Try to keep the, you know, the kids moving along. It's a little bit of an effort. I don't know that 2 people are going to do it on a Friday, Saturday night. Might need a third. But also, you know, if it wasn't for our local community, you know, that's our success. We wouldn't be here without you guys. So I can tell you that it can be done. You can mesh the business community with the residential community. Right across the street, there are bars open till 3 a.m. They do have liquor licenses. I know that because we have to deal sometimes with some folks that want to proposition my 15 and 16-year-old young men and women. So I think if we had a choice of what was there, this is a good thing for town. I mean, I remember the Jefferson course. I think I was a pro on it for years, and if Mrs. Humphreys didn't yell at you, she didn't love you. But from what I've seen of Mr. Benevetto's other properties, he seems to do it right. He's met my concerns. We're behind him, and I think it would be a good thing for the community because we really do need to do something before we don't have any businesses left here. It's hard doing business, man, and it's hard doing it in 100 days when everybody thinks that you're trying to gouge them. It's 100 days, but you know, my flood insurance is now $8,000. Offshore, it's nothing. There's a high cost and a high cost of investment to get this going, and you need every day and month that you can get the build. So I understand the urgency of trying to get it created. After hearing what Mr. Benevetto said, he's met my concerns, and I'm all for the project.
Thank you. Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Fred Kay. I live at 11 South Adams Avenue. And if you want
Do you swear affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I have a question with the ADA, the Disability Act. Is that in a 2-story commercial building, you can limit somebody with a disability to only the first story? They're not allowed to.
Can you answer that, sir?
If you are duplicating services.
Microphone, please.
If you're duplicating services on the second floor that you can provide on the first floor, then there's rules and regulations that don't require that you allow people or have to have people on the second floor.
So double playing the first 9 holes is the same as playing 18 holes?
Yes. Actually, we only have to provide playing for 9 holes as part of what we're doing here. But we're offering with the return ramp up to the clubhouse, we're offering those folks to play a full 18 holes.
It would be nice if they had a ramp to play like everybody else.
you know,
That ramp would be about a mile long to go a half inch for every foot to get to the second floor.
All right, that's my answer.
Well, can I ask you a question? So is this golf course fully ADA compliant or partially ADA compliant?
Fully compliant and then
Fully
some.
compliant.
We're actually doubling the requirement for ADA ADA.
That question was
compliant.
asked of me, I just wanted that clear. Thank you. Name and address, please?
Hi, Jeanette Buck, 23 South Adams Avenue.
Ms. Buck, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I'm not opposed to the golf course, but I do think we need to address traffic on Adams Avenue. We kind of have a double dose with the Wawa and now the golf course. I've lived on Adams Avenue 17 years. I've watched traffic increase more. It's hard to get out of our own driveway. Cars, since Washington Avenue has become one way, they come up Ventnor Avenue to the traffic light. Where do I get in Wawa? I can't go left. I can't, I go straight now to Adams Ave. I fly down Adams Ave, make a left on Pacific, a left up Washington. Oh, there's the entrance to Wawa. I actually called Wawa corporate office this past year and asked them to put up those like wind type signs to the entrance off of Ventnor Avenue, which helped actually quite a bit. And they were very agreeable. They saw that more traffic was coming in to the back of the Wawa. They didn't want to come to the planning board to get a permanent sign. So they did that, and that did help. But I see what they're showing in other towns. Everyone knows how busy Wawa is. That's not a secret. The traffic on Adams Avenue has to be dealt with. Maybe we get speed bumps on Adams Avenue. We have to do something. Someone is going to get hurt on Adams Avenue. My own husband had an accident Memorial Day weekend with a neighbor across the street, trying to each get out of their own driveway. You try to get out of your driveway and boom, there's a car flying, and it's a lot of teenagers. People who don't know how to get in to the Wawa, and they don't know that there's a back entrance. They just keep going till they get to Adams. Oh, there's a left turn. Okay, now I go around, I get in. This is going to create a whole lot more traffic. I think the kids need something to do. I think it's great, but other things need to be addressed. So I hope the board will consider the traffic, maybe speed bumps, maybe some kind of additional.
That's one of those issues we have no control over. That would have to go to the city commission and the police chief for public safety. I understand your concerns,
Okay.
but we just have no control over that, so
Okay.
we can't even, there's nothing we can
So
comment on.
traffic doesn't happen here.
Well, we can consider that, but we can't do anything about speed bumps, so it's your comments. If you
All
would
right.
like to take it further, I would take it to the city commission.
Okay, and then my only other question is about the music. They're gonna have music. They didn't really talk a whole lot about music.
I think he just talked about
Yeah,
it with
we
the
just talked
person
about that.
before you.
So the music won't go off until midnight, is that correct?
Sir?
We have control from the clubhouse over all of these speakers individually to be able to control them. And I would imagine as the last golf player makes their way around the course, the sound is going to be turned down. And at 11 o'clock, would there be any provisions to lower the sound that? That's true. That's true. I mean, they're so directional sound that the sound's not going to be traveling off the site.
So what is is there a sound ordinance in Margate or
Oh, yeah.
curfew? What
Sure.
time does sound
No, not
have to-
curfew, it's in decibels.
Okay,
And it'll be way below the decibel level that's allowed.
okay. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Steve Warner, 103 North Sumner Avenue.
Warner?
Warner, yeah. Want me to swear me in? No?
Yep. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm the president of the Margate Concerned Citizens Group, and we've been in favor of a miniature golf course here in Margate for 5-6 years. Okay, we've tried to get the commissioners, the mayor and the commissioners to do this, to do something. Our members feel that there needs to be more entertainment, more activities for the kids in town here. There just haven't been enough activities, and I think this will be a great thing for the city, for the kids. We actually took the time to get it, when Ann Pancoast, who was a president formerly, she's since passed, but when she was the president, we went around and got, had petitions signed to have a miniature golf course brought to the city. That's how important we thought it was. And I thank God for Mr. Benevento to come here and make this investment. I think this is a great thing for the city, and it's going to be a benefit for everybody. And I don't think there's going to be any more traffic than there already is. And at least they're going to have something to do. Because to give the kids something to do, they need, anybody that lives here knows that the kids need something to do. And this will be a great thing for them. So thank you very much, Mr. Benevento.
Thank you.
Hi, how you doing? Michael Fry, 215 North Sumner Avenue.
Mr. Friday, swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have talked to Mark, and I, volunteered, our business on the weekends for his employees to park at our business on off-peak times. And also, I had the same plan like 5 years ago. It was my idea to build something, and I was just going to propose it before I heard about this. About building one behind Union Avenue School. Would have been a good place, but there would have been more neighbors and more complaints back there. But this is a great location for it, and I wish them well.
And what's your business?
Fry's Auto.
I know that. I just
okay. Thank you.
Michael Weiner, 9400 Ventnor Avenue.
Mr. Weiner, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely. Yes. Coming into this, I had like 3 pages. I was going to shoot this down. It was just horrible. What a bad idea. Because I live. Ed, can I have that board right there? Thank you. Excellent. Yeah. I don't have your little pointy. I live right here. And this is, as they said, it's mixed use, but 84%. Oops, sorry. 84% of that is residential. My concern is I like what you did for Mel in the back with the picture windows so Mel can see into the golf course. My concern is what can you do for me while I'm sitting on my deck looking at the second floor, because you're talking about now that second floor is going to be 22 to 24 feet high, which comes right, to my deck as well as my windows and lights blaring in there. So what is it that they can do for us on that side of Adams Avenue? The parking is a disaster, so that we know that, but I'm just concerned about that.
Microphone, please.
Ed?
As I said, the lights are still cut-off fixtures, which means, and we have examples of those fixtures in the submittals we made, which means that they have the light is entirely directed at the ground. There's no light directed up or to the side, and what those bollards' height would be about 3 feet above the ground, and they shine towards the golf hole.
Yes, but what I'm saying there, forget about the lighting a minute. What I'm talking about is on the second floor, is there any fencing over there so it blocks my view of looking at the golfers and them looking into my window or on my deck? I'm directly across at the same footage.
It's an open mesh fence, and
how high is it?
Once again, I was at a distance.
Mr. Weiner?
Yes.
There is nothing proposed to block your view of the golf course from across Adams Avenue.
Okay.
We apologize for that, but the idea is the visual aspect of it, we think is a nice thing, not a bad thing. We're sorry that you don't like it, but there's nothing, we're not putting up a fence to block your view of the golf course.
So we're doing nothing for anybody on South Adams, to block that area. You aesthetically, yeah, you think it's wonderful. And yeah, I think it's going to be very pretty. Do I think it belongs downtown Margate? No, I don't. But something that would absolutely, because if I'm sitting on my deck, just relaxing and all this noise is coming across, and you will hear noise, you know that. 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 people can walk down the street and you'll hear them whispering or talking. That's how loud it gets, even when it's that quiet. So I'm just looking for something. Is there a mesh fence that they put up there, or something else, even if it's a 4-foot, 3-foot fence along the top?
The answer is yes. There is the ramp structure. The ramp structure which raises. 8 feet. The ramp structure is 8 feet off grade.
Okay.
So that would provide some visual screen, I suppose.
Now, I'm only talking about the second story, Chris.
Nothing that blocks the second story, just like there's nothing that would block a second story deck across the street, just like there's nothing that would block a second story window across the street. In fact, this would be far less intrusive, thank you, Ed, this would be far less intrusive than residential structures across the street, condominiums across the street, and retail stores across the street.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Jim Duncan. I live at 4 South Adams Avenue.
Mr. Duncan, you swear affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I sure do.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Duncan. I live at 4 South Adams, which is right across the street. My front door looks right across the street. I have no problem with the golf course. You know, I can't help but wondering, I look at, we live at the seashore. I mean, we always have, and this is part of the seashore is a golf course. We've had golf courses around here, never caused any problems. A few of the bars might have along the way, but the golf courses never did. But I have no problem. I hear a lot of people speaking about what kind of problem it is, and they've been here for 17 to 20 years. I've never seen them. But I guess they just come down certain times. But that said, Mr. Di Benedetto came to me like a gentleman, showed me the plans, told me what he wanted to do. Anything that I wanted, you know, that he could do for me, he would. And I'm sure he will. Seems like a good guy. The problem sometimes is everybody wants to live at a little fishing village, but nobody wants to fishing. I'll see you guys.
Thank you.
Evening, John Sabo, 9400 Veterinary Avenue.
It's Sabo?
Sabo, S-A-B-O.
Mr. Sabo, you swear affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Jim's a neighbor of mine. I see him all the time. So there's no problem with that. I have some concerns about the curfew. The curfew says 10 o'clock. Now, they're saying that there'll be a 18-year-old and 15-year-old in charge of the golf course. I don't think a 15-year-old could work past a certain time in the summer. But how do you expect, I'll turn this way, 18-year-old and a 15-year-old to control how many people on the golf course? I mean, you expect them to be very busy. So I have a concern.
Would you talk into the microphone, please?
I'm concerned about a 15-year-old and 18-year-old controlling a crowd of kids. You all know, summertime, we have a lot of children here, underage. I'd use the word running loose without parents taking care of them. So now you got the Wawa, now we're going to have the golf course. I don't know how many times I called the police about things happening at the bank. I chase people. Now, you expect a 15-year-old to go out there and control other kids? Let's be real. That's a big concern. I think other people may have the same concern here. I don't know. But I'm concerned about that. Next issue is I refer to as the Las Vegas sign. How many feet wide is that sign?
10.
It's 10 feet wide. And
4 foot.
4 foot high. What kind of lighting is on that sign?
We explained that it's exterior lighting shining towards the sign.
Okay, and that's
nothing interior.
Okay. Now again, I'm right next to Mr. Weiner. My bedroom is upstairs. I'm looking out on the golf course. I understand about lighting, but I'll have lighting there all the time now. And to be open till midnight, I have a concern about that. I think the proper time should be 10 o'clock. Because you do have a 10 o'clock curfew for kids under 17. And again, I want to go to bed by a certain time, by 11 o'clock. I'm old, I can't help it, okay? It's the truth. But now I'm going to have a golf course across the street. It's going to be lit. Low lighting, whatever, it's going to be lit, and there'll be people out there hitting golf balls. I made a hole-in-one, et cetera, et cetera. I really need you to address that issue as far as I know it's not probably possible, but I'd like to speak to the gentleman who owns the place, control the time. I'm a little concerned that you come here and don't know the quadrants of time we expect your most customers. You know, if you're running a business, you want to know how many cashiers to have on hand, how many people at the burger place to control wait time. We should know when he peaks, when he doesn't peak as far as people there. But I know I'm repeating myself, by 10 o'clock time, the last ticket should be sold at 9:15, so by 10 o'clock, the surrounding people will know by 10 o'clock, 10:30, there'll be some peace and quiet out there and prevent kids coming from Wawa down to play golf. What else? I have about 20 things here. I'll try to limit it to that. The lighting, the parking is impossible. There's no parking there. You go there right now, there's a few parking spots on Adams. Pulling out of my driveways, it's demolition derby there. I really think you gotta look at the parking, that there is no parking there. It's just gonna cause more problems. Sorry it took so long, I apologize.
That's fine.
I know you're all tired. I got a 2-hour drive home, so thank you for your...
Thank you.
Okay.
Next, please. Name and address.
William Einhorn, 35 East Drive, Margate.
I'm sorry, can you just state your name again?
William Einhorn, E-I-N-H-O-R-N.
Mr. Einhorn, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
My concerns, I have to echo the comments of the last gentleman. I agree with them, but my concerns are one of traffic density. We already know that's a very, very dense area in terms of traffic, especially in the summertime. We're all familiar with Club Wa and what happened, and this would only add to that. My concern is one that I think the board should address, and that is with the signage and the attraction that the miniature golf course hopes to have is going to cause even more traffic there, more drop-offs. People are going to be double parked on Ventnor Avenue to drop people off, and it could be a public safety nightmare. And I think that the public safety and welfare of the community is one thing that this board has to consider in ruling upon the request for variances. Am I opposed to miniature golf? Absolutely not. But let's think about where the miniature golf course was before, on Jefferson.
Right next to it, a party pack.
I thought that was not directly on Ventnor Avenue, that it was
Where
off a
party
little-
pack was a golf course. Where Wawa
Oh, it was
is,
Wawa,
a golf
okay.
course.
So, but now you're doubling that density. I mean, if you're going to have the attraction of the Wawa, now you're going to have the attraction of the golf course, the miniature golf course. From public and safety welfare standpoint, I think that it's a big problem. And I think the applicant, to his credit, admitted, hey, look, there's going to be some traffic issues and pedestrian issues, and that's why we want to have this big sign. It's sort of like a double-edged sword. Yeah, you want to try and make it's there for somebody's safety, but it's also going to cause a hell of a lot more concentration of people and many safety issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Name and address, please.
Janice Lehman, 35 East Drive.
Jen Steeman?
Lehman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
M-A-N. That's okay.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I had a couple issues. Does the variance attach to the property or the project? I don't know who can answer that, if anybody's a zoning attorney.
Does the
It applies to the project.
So if these people went out of business, the variance goes with them and the property would just revert to the regular zoning?
It's kept open as another miniature golf course.
Say the golf course goes out of business, like the one on Jefferson. The variance attaches to this project, not to the property in perpetuity.
If they don't change the project.
Well,
The variance-
maybe it doesn't make it as a golf course and somebody wants to open something else.
So they're probably,
Will they have
if they're
will-
going up at another bank, do you think they're going to have a gorilla sign there?
That's not my concern. My concern primarily is the parking.
No,
Parking is
It's not a
a variance.
question.
It's to the project.
Okay. The other issue is Mr. Balanson doesn't know how many, says he doesn't have to provide how many customers they will have, any kind of marketing information that anybody who has a business background would know to put together a project of this size.
He said he doesn't have to present it to the board. I think that's
But
what
I
he was
think he
saying.
has the burden to provide those numbers when he wants a variance in parking. He's coming to this board
He
and
doesn't
asking.
have that burden, or we would require him to do that.
Okay, well, I think
The
it would be
parking is
good-
related to the size of the building, not how many people are
Yeah,
going.
well, this is, that is
That's
very.
what the ordinance says.
Can I finish? It's very disingenuous to attach the parking to this small office. That's like attaching parking at the link to the executive office and saying everybody else is going to take the subway, when this property will be filled with people. And it's not going to be all people who, there's going to be people driving there. Imagine Johnny's if you took away the parking lot across the street.
We can't change the law for Mr. Balanson and say the
We
law
are
doesn't apply to
changing the
you.
existing zoning for Mr. Balanson's client.
No, we're not.
He's looking for a variance. That's an exception.
And you're saying that it shouldn't be based on the size of the building. You want us to change that. We cannot change that. Based on the size of the building, he needs 2 parking spaces.
And I'm saying that then he shouldn't get a variance, because it's very disingenuous to say that is a realistic assessment of the amount of people that are going to be there on any kind of business. And I'm saying that's why they don't want to present that information. I went years ago, and this may not apply to the Avalon location with my children, and insects were always a terrible problem when I was there. So I wondered how they're going to address insects with the water. Okay. I don't think this, my final point is, I don't think this will be a benefit to the restaurants and things in that area. In fact, I think it will suck up the parking, and they'll have a harder time attracting people to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Harold Rosen, 21 South Adams.
Mr. Rosen, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do is come back to the issue of safety and adult supervision. We know the problems around the Wawa. We know with the required increase in police supervision based on the activities that took place. We've been presented with a plan in which an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old are going to be responsible for a large group of individuals of various ages, plus the congregation and loitering of young individuals that will continue to take place around these 2 businesses. I think there is a legitimate and necessary obligation on the part of the business owner to make sure that there is realistic and representative adult supervision, especially nights and weekends, because the safety of the residents, petty mischief, petty crime, public acts of indecency, really could increase exponentially without realistic supervision. Now, certainly you can argue one person can't do everything, but the reality is one person is better than none.
How old do you think the lifeguards are on the beach?
Sorry?
They're the same age. The lifeguards on the beach are the same
They
ages.
receive training. How
do you know they're not receiving training?
They're expert at what they do.
And if you have a phone, they can call the police department.
An 18-year, will an 18-year-old have the intelligence and the responsibility to do that? To assume that they will is not realistic. So sorry? You know what? They're here representing you. So I would expect them to say no different. And the truth is that you will not be on the site on a Saturday evening. You do not live on that block. I'm just asking the board, in their duty, to include safety as an issue in your deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next. Name and address,
Hi,
please.
Joy Cantor, 1 South Martindale in Ventnor.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, I lost my attorney.
I'm sorry. Of course, I didn't get your name.
State your name again, please.
Joy Cantor, 1 South Martindale, Ventnor City.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on the fishing comment and say a brief statement, and I mean this with all my heart and with all respect. I lived here, grew up here, moved away, lived on 5 acres in New Mexico in the middle of nowhere, and had no neighbors and had a very peaceful existence. I came home. I live on a very crowded street with a lot of restaurants and places and a lot of noise and the entrance to the boardwalk, and it's not always perfect, and sometimes it's hard to manage. Sometimes I can't sleep at night. Sometimes I'm up in the morning and I'm disturbed. And I mean this again from the bottom of my heart. I meditate daily, and it helps me deal with a non-perfect world. And if anyone would like me to help them learn how to meditate, I offer you my service. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Name and address, please.
Yes, Ed Blumenthal, 11 South
I
Adams.
couldn't hear you.
Ed Blumenthal, 11 South Adams.
Mr. Blumenthal, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And in line with some of the other comments, my mother was born in Atlantic City. I've been here forever. I do have a residence in another area and come here for the summer and throughout the winter. I have quite a few concerns. The first actually came up tonight as you're discussing things, and you're saying that there's going to be a change with the grill or the sign. You're changing the sign, you're changing the vegetation. And my understanding is that there's now revisions to the plan. Now, if that's true, has the board and the public had the opportunity to view now what is revised plans? My question is that if it's no, then until the final plans have been presented, this should be postponed until a time when the final plan is available. My understanding...
Our legal opinion from our attorney is that's not true.
Well, yeah, but there was a meeting last month for the food truck, and our plans were changed.
Substantial changes.
And the precedent had been set at that point.
This has already been determined, sir.
First point, thank you. Second point, and again, I don't mean to be I don't mean to be difficult. I'm just going to go over this. This is the first time that I've been to a zoning meeting. You guys have a big advantage over me, so I'm kind of new at this. On a continuance, the short notice. This all began after Labor Day when nobody could be easily aware of what's taking place. I was told by Mr. Benedetto that the property just happened to come available, but I since found out that Mr. Benedetto is on the board of the bank that owns the building, so that's kind of the optics is not very good, that this was all began after Labor Day. And then the notification was sent out for me at 13 minutes before 5 on a Friday, burning up several days of notification. And with the requirement of a signature, now I have to go to the post office to pick it up. So it was a week before I was able to.
Were you notified in the time period that the law allows?
The law allowed, and the answer is yes. But now I only have 7 days. So 50% was burned up because of the process. I'm not disagreeing with the fact that they adhere to the law. So we had to go find a solicitor, an attorney to represent us. And as I started making phone calls, they started checking their, what do you call it when they have a conflict? And it turned out that because Mr. Benedetto and a lot of the board members here have so many business activities, that it took several days before we found an attorney that didn't have any conflicts. So now we are basically at a huge disadvantage that we don't have any representation. Now we since have an attorney, but because of the short time, he couldn't be here tonight, and of course he gave me some notes to follow. So
It's not unusual for people to come here with attorneys to oppose a case. It's not an unusual situation that it does happen within the time period that's allowed.
I understand.
But you're saying it couldn't happen in your case.
We had difficulty. I mean, look, it's not, as I said, it's the first time for me. If it's other people have done it quite often enough and before, then it was easier for them. I didn't know anybody, and I had to start from scratch. So I apologize for that. But I was then looking at the master plan, and I want to put into where you put on the record. Is that what you call it?
Sure.
Something on the record?
You want to mark something?
Yes.
We'll call Blumenthal 1.
CBD, which is the CBD zone, Central Business District existing, which was started in 2006, I think, or 2005. Anyway, it was reaffirmed in 2016. And it says permitted uses are residential upper stores, retail sales, retail services, restaurants, not drive-through bars, business professional offices as long as they're not on the ground floor, banks, and governmental. You've changed the zoning to this is now an R, and when I look through, I don't know who gets this.
We changed the zoning tonight?
I don't know when you changed the zoning.
What zoning was changed?
You're saying that it's now R, the zoning is R?
CBD.
What is it? It's retail sales?
That's a, retail sales is allowed
Okay.
in the central business district, yes.
Retail services.
And services.
Who do I give this to as far as having it in the record?
Just
Oh.
pass. Oh, okay.
But the retail definition is retail sales is establishment engaged in
One
selling
sec.
goods.
Just one sec, Mr.
Yeah.
Joanna, what is that? I'm going to call Blumenthal 1.
Okay.
I just want to make
Thank
sure we
you.
have a record of it.
That's all right.
R&D, Remington and Burnix, comprehensive master plan update. It's not a municipal. It's on letterhead. I don't know.
Okay, I'm just going to call it 26, printout from 2016 Comprehensive Master Plan Update, page 32.
Thank you. So in reading that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. In reading that, I see that it has retail sales, and this is a New Jersey, some other city, but it's retail sales, establishment engaged in selling goods or merchandise in general public.
Retail sales and services.
Retail services, an establishment providing services as opposed to products to general public for personal or household use, and no instance shall be drug rehabilitation. So, I mean, this is not retail sales. This is an amusement attraction, and
Have you read our ordinance and the
Which is
definition of
allowed.
retail service?
Amusement, recreation is allowed, specifically in our ordinance. We're not changing anything.
you're now saying that this is a retail service.
I'm
Is that what
saying
you're saying?
amusement and recreation is allowed as part of retail sales and services per our ordinance. We are not changing anything.
I couldn't find the ordinance.
I can read the
We can-
definition.
I'm not.
No, wait.
I'm not.
I know,
I
but-
understand. I mean, you know.
But he will read the ordinance to you to satisfy you that we're not changing anything.
I'll look it
tonight.
up.
There is
Yeah.
nothing sinister
I
happening.
understand what you're saying. I didn't say there was anything sinister. I'm just trying to figure out why it changed. What? I don't
Nothing-
Nothing
understand.
changed.
Okay. Margate Miniature Golf, which was on Jefferson Avenue, based on Yelp, is the same as Storybook Land, Playcade Arcade, and Castaway Cove and Playland. So it is more like a boardwalk amusement and not a recreational facility. But I guess that's my opinion. And I'd like to put into the record the photos of what exists now, which is the 9300 block of Ventnor Avenue, the 9400 block east side and west side, all show that they're nice, small stores and businesses. It's not a arcade, it's not a recreational facility. When we bought here, like most other people, we were looking for, and we wanted to be close to where there's shops so we could walk to places to buy goods and services.
All right, I'll call those Blumenthal 2, 3 photos of existing conditions. Did you take those?
Thank you.
Did you take those photos?
No, these are Google Map.
Google Map photos, okay.
Yep.
You can,
Everything's Google Map. And now in addressing how close the property is, that there doesn't appear to be a setback between the property and then the adjacent building, which is, I think, number 5.
The requirement is 0.
The requirement is 0?
Yes.
Well, it's interesting because no other property, no other commercial property,
Requirement is 0.
so any property can have any company can come in and put a building directly up against our property?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
CBD zone, yes.
That's atrocious.
It may be atrocious, but it's nothing new tonight. It's nothing for this project. That's what the law is.
The other, again, while things were being discussed, and I'm not against mini golf, so I mean that's I'm not trying to be a nasty person, but when we're talking about parking and it's based on a 16 by 16 building for the 2 spots, when you have a pump room, a deck area, a cave, a water tower, these are all structures. Why is not the square footage of those structures taken into consideration? When you go over to Avalon, and you look at Avalon, there's a building there, and you got a pathway underneath, and I mean, it's not there. It's a building. The fact that it happens to look like a rock is one thing, but it happens to be a building. And why isn't the square footage of those structures taken into consideration for the requirements for the parking? It's a question. I don't know would I get an answer or not, I'm not sure how it works, but I'm just saying, I don't understand how those structures don't count towards the requirement of them having parking spaces. I guess,
I'm a CPA. I always tell my clients when they ask me the rationale behind tax law is it's government and it doesn't have to make sense. But that's what this board has to go by.
Things don't make sense?
IRS code? Yes, I tell my clients that all the time.
Not disagreeing. In any case, I find that this is not a clean process, and I don't at all care for the way everything is being pushed through after Labor Day when there is no ability to have.
That's where I bring up the word sinister, as if there's something wrong with the procedure or that somebody's trying to hide something from someone.
No, it's just the optics of it. I mean, it's obvious that they want to take advantage of every part of the process so they don't have to have all the people here, yet they have plenty of time.
I don't find that to be obvious, sir.
Well, again, we differ on our opinions, but the fact that they have 3 or 4 months, or at least, let's see, September, October, November, and part of December, they have 3 or 4 months to coach people and bring people along and have people come in to say how fantastic they are and the whole love fest. I mean,
that sounds sinister too.
Well, I guess we can't disagree. We can't agree on that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Name and address, please.
Yale Steingard, 5 North 31st Avenue, Longport.
Mr. Steingard, do you swear affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
I'm the president of the Shalom House. It's a low-income housing project in Ventnor, primarily elderly residents. I'm also the president of the Margate lacrosse organization here in town. So I've got about 150 elderly residents on one end and about 165 kids playing in our lacrosse organization. So if anyone knows the town and what goes on here in the pulse, I've got it on both ends of the spectrum. I can tell you on both ends that all these people need something to do. There are 0 activities. I've got a 14-year-old who's a freshman at Ocean City High School. He does not want to come back to Margate after school. There's nothing to do here. And this is a wonderful town, but we're running out of things to do, and kids want to leave. And it's a shame. Ocean City High School.
It'll be closed when he's getting out of school.
What will be closed?
You don't need to address it. Ma'am, it's not your turn. Speak.
Well, I'll address her. But how about the weekends? He doesn't go to school on Saturdays and Sundays.
But when he gets out of school, your golf course is going to be open.
It's 9 months of the school year. If you want to go at it, we can go at it. But the reality is, high school kids
Enough
play
of this back
miniature
and
golf.
forth, please. Ma'am, don't speak anymore until you get up to the
Point
microphone,
being,
please.
I've got a pulse on this town, these children, the elderly, and the parents of the kids that we all know. And they're all are looking forward to something that's coming to our town. So,
thank you.
I hope you guys take that in consideration.
Next. Anyone else in the public like to speak? Public portion is closed. Is there any other discussion, any questions from the board? Would you read the motion, please?
Sure. Chris, you read Roger's report.
Red Rogers' report. The only comment I have, Roger, is with respect to curb and sidewalk. My recollection is the paver sidewalk on both Adams and Ventnor Avenue in pretty good condition and new. To the extent any of that is, it'll obviously be matched when the curb cuts are closed. We will match what's there.
Yes.
But I think the remainder of it is not in need of replacement.
That's
I
fine.
think it's recently been done.
Does the sidewalk on Ventnor Avenue match the new brickwork? Is that?
Sidewalk in Ventnor Avenue, it's pavers now, it's going to remain pavers.
Oh, okay.
And when we close the curb cuts, we will match what's existing.
Okay.
Okay.
That was the intent, yes.
And you saw the city engineer's report as well, right? And you're okay with everything in there?
I did, to the extent the comments in the city engineer's report are applicable to this particular site, we'll of course address those comments, yes, without.
You agree with the waivers that should be requested?
Exactly right, thank you.
Leo, before you start, the letter we have about the water drainage, that's all incorporated too, right? The volunteered drainage system that they're doing?
Which
Yeah,
letter
that's
is
part of
that?
the application.
Oh, that's part of, from the app, yes, that's part of the application. Okay, so we need a motion to grant preliminary and final major site plan approval together with the following variances, the following C variances. Parking variances for 0 spaces where 2 spaces are required, a fence height of 8 feet where 5 feet is the maximum permitted, to permit a freestanding sign where our ordinance does not permit one, to permit a sign height of 4 feet where 3 feet is the maximum, to permit sign area of 39 square feet per side where 52.5 square feet is permitted on a corner property, together with the following conditions. All conditions set forth in Mr. McLarnin's report dated December 14th, 2017, unless modified on the record tonight. The applicant will comply with all conditions in the board engineer's report, or the city engineer's report, which I believe is dated December 5th, 2017. The applicant shall address all checklist items to the satisfaction of the municipal engineer and the board planner. And it's incorporated within the sign variances, but the applicant will remove the gorilla from the sign and will increase the sign to the required 10-foot.
Mr. Manos, if the board could know for the record, there seems to be some confusion, or you could know for the record, there were no revisions tonight to the site plan that was submitted. The only revisions were to the freestanding sign, and that's all.
That is correct. And I'll just note, all other conditions, applicant will comply with all other conditions made, all other representations made during the course of the hearing tonight.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Tom Collins?
Long night, very interesting.
Wait, I
Every one
have
of
one
us up here
clarification.
have been part of the.
Hey, Tom, hold on one sec. I'm sorry.
One clarification from the engineer's report. Item number 5, under B, general review, we would recommend the board consider requiring the applicant, it's late, requiring the applicant to install decorative street lighting on Ventnor Avenue in keeping with the city's streetscape and scheme. That has not been specifically addressed.
The applicant has agreed to match the decorative streetlights along Ventnor Avenue that exist now.
Tom?
Okay.
Sorry.
A lot of you don't realize, but over the last year and a half, 2 years, just about everybody up at this table has spent a tremendous amount of time working on a new master plan for the city. One of the main concerns that we looked at when we saw the master plan is the transient neighbor, the lack of transient, meaning visitors to our city. People don't visit Margate. And the fact that we were really becoming a suitcase city. Everybody would come for the weekend and go home. Businesses are dying. Businesses are turning into residential, just like we saw in other places. This here meets what we are intending for the master plan. And it seems like everybody came up and wanted to talk about a golf course. The golf course is a permitted retail use. We're not voting tonight to say we're voting for a golf course. We're voting for a sign variance, a fence variance, and 2 small parking variances. And they are very minuscule. The neighborhood is a CBD. It is a well-traversed neighborhood. It's going to be a well-traversed neighborhood. The negative impacts of this are very de minimis. It's a very low scale, modest. It's a great attraction for the area. It's not something that's going to bring gangs of kids in because they're not going to go sit and play miniature golf. And most of those kids were the Philly kids that came down for their spring breaks instead of Wildwood, they hit us. The positives are this is going to be right at the border of our pedestrian walkway, our new corridor to the bay. It fits what this city wants and what we need, and we need to bring families back, build our schools, and build our community. So I vote 100% in favor of this.
Clem Wozleski?
Tom didn't leave much to say.
Sorry.
It's a very interesting design. It's much better than the golf course that was proposed a while back at Franklin Frontenac Avenue. It's got much more class than the pirate ship. I like the fact that the higher elements are set considerably back from the streets. Gives a visual transition building up to them. I don't really have any problem at all, except, and it's probably not within our realm, but there's 15 and 18-year-olds operating a facility of this magnitude. I can't see it working at all. Plus, I think the 15-year-old's going to have to be home a couple of hours before he's cleaning up the golf course. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. I think who's ever realm that particular concern falls in ought to be alerted by this board, look into it and see what the proper means of operation is. But as far as the variants are concerned, I approve the application.
Rich Patterson?
Before I say my vote, I want to reiterate that every member of this board is a volunteer, doesn't get paid, a resident of Margate, and has the best interest of Margate at heart. We developed a master plan, as Tom said. We developed a master plan that would encourage this. And insinuations that this board is in cahoots or trying to get this through in the wintertime to do anything that's not above board or not transparent is a travesty, and I hope nobody actually takes that seriously from the few people that have been saying that. The parking variance here is, it could be no more of a no-brainer than there's more parking with this parking variance than without the parking variance, so it's almost impossible to vote no on that. The fence is not an 8-foot fence from ground height around the front edges of the property. You will never see the effect of this 8-foot fence, and the person affected by the 8-foot fence asked for windows in the fence and got it. So that's also a minuscule variance. The sign, I didn't hear the applicant saying he was causing traffic problems. I heard him say that by putting the sign there, he would prevent traffic problems, and I happen to agree with him. I think it would. A monkey, a giant monkey in town, I like it, but I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't like it, and I'm glad he compromised on it and had a more low-key sign. I think the property itself will speak for itself with its landscaping, with its waterfalls, with its permeable land instead of a flat-top parking lot. I welcome this. And there was a lot of testimony tonight from the applicant that I didn't have to ask questions because he answered my questions and my concerns. I had concerns about this property, and all my concerns were answered. I think the applicant made a mistake by saying there's a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old. That's not set in stone. That's an example. There could be a 15-year-old. There could be an 18-year-old. That's not our concern. If there's problems on that property, it'll be addressed by the police. If there's problems on that property, from listening to the owner, he's not going to let those problems continue and say, well, I have to have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. I know Clem is looking for part-time work, and he's certainly not 18 years old. So I vote yes on this property, on this project.
Mike Cristaldi?
Wow, I think everybody on the board really left nothing to say. What I do have to say about an 18-year-old is, we have 18-year-olds in Afghanistan, we have 18-year-olds in Iraq. They're making some pretty serious decisions. So I have no trouble with an 18-year-old doing that. The 15-year-old, that's your problem. I think this is great for the neighborhood. I know some neighbors are a little rough with it, but I think in the long run, it's good for the city and for the whole community, so I vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
Mark, nice to see you back. I was worried we were never going to see your golf course back here again, but I'm proud to see you guys come back in the city and give us another shot at it. I voted last time for it, and I thought it was a great deal for the city of Margate. I think we really needed another golf course. As to the variances, the sign's reduced, the curb cuts are being removed. We're getting 3 spots there, and there's no letter from the police chief about the parking or any more traffic. So he was okay with it. He looked at the plan, and I think the guys were in my office for the last 2 months researching my files for all the information on this prior property. So it's not like this just came upon us all of a sudden. You guys have been looking at this for a while. So I vote yes. I don't see it being a problem.
Margaret Gubernalty?
Yes, I was here also in, what was it, 8 years ago?
Always cleaning up for you.
The other mini golf course. In terms of the variances, I agree with the other board members, they're de minimis. This is a permitted use. The curb cuts will add off-street parking. We do know that, add parking off-street. Parking is always at a premium in our city. The sign without the gorilla is good, is a good thing. This actually reduces it's less intense use than what could be there. With 4 commercial, if you could put 4 commercial uses and 6 condos, and I think it would increase the density otherwise. So I think that's a positive. I don't see any detriment to the public good here. This is a seashore community. We live in a seashore community, and this is something that we need. I'm just fortunate enough to live here all year long, but this is something that the city needs. It is a recreational amenity, which is a good thing, and I know that we're dealing with professionals here who have experience in the mini golf business and recreation in other seashore communities. I certainly vote in favor of this application.
Craig Palmisano?
I agree with the other board members. This is well needed. There's nothing for our young people to do here. We used to have a movie theater here. We had 2 bowling alleys. We had 4 golf courses. Now we have nothing. We're going to have 1 golf course.
And an arcade.
Well, and an arcade. Now we're going to have a golf course. There's a vacant bank there now. The variances for the fence height is not a problem up against the Wawa side of the building. The benefits outweigh the detriments on this case, and I vote for this project.
Despina Hess?
I'm also going to vote in favor of the application as to the parking variance. I agree with Rich. It's a no-brainer here. Essentially, by gaining those 3 curb cuts back, we're providing more parking, and their availability of use is to all members of the community as opposed to just to employees or patrons to the site, and they be available year-round. It's worth noting, since it's been referenced by many people tonight, that life goes on after Labor Day, and by having those additional parking spaces, that's going to benefit the entire community for the entirety of the year. As to the fence height, I believe it was mentioned in the spoken testimony as well as the application that was presented that was put in at that specific height as a benefit for height relief for the neighbors. It was requested benefit. So essentially that's there to benefit the neighbors, not necessarily the applicant. So
Can I clarify that in 1 second?
Yeah.
The neighbor did not
The
request
windows.
the 8-foot. He requested the windows in the.
I apologize. The design of the fence was amenable to the neighbors, and it benefited the site as well. As to the signage, I believe that the benefit of having the sign to alert approaching patrons benefits the application as well as the neighborhood as a whole, because people will be notified of the upcoming site, and they'll be able to prepare their driving or their walking, whatever they're doing, their biking, to be safer when approaching this site. Safety is a concern both to the neighbors as well as us. We're neighbors in this community, and safety is a major concern to all of us. We're parents, we're people that are going to go to this site. I have 3 young children. I plan to take my children there, and I want it to be a safe environment. So I'm sure that the owner will ensure that that's a safe place because he wants people to be coming there. As to the height, the appearance of it, I'm comfortable with the changes that were made. I believe it'll appease both the neighbors by being less intense as well as achieving the requirements that are needed for the owner. So for all these reasons, and given the benefits that this applicant's giving to the community, increased parking, amenity and enjoyment to the community, whether it be year-round or part-time, the fact that he's increasing permeability and drainage to a very flood-prone area, I believe all of these benefits to the community warrant a vote in favor of the application.
Mike Richmond?
Yeah, as far as the parking goes, I think it actually benefits the community because of the safety issue of not having 2 more cars backing out onto Adams Avenue. I think the sign thing is actually a hardship because most of the commercial buildings in town, you can put the sign on the front of the building or, you know, whatever height you want, but you don't really have that here. So I think that's why we had to make an exception. And as far as I mean, the fence is a no-brainer. You know, it just, we talked about golf balls, you know. You're gonna have to hit a golf ball pretty high to get it over that fence. So it's in the CBD district, and it's gonna greatly benefit the CBD district, so I approve it.
Application passes 9-0. Chris, please come sign.
Do we make a motion to close?
Make that motion.
We have any other business? No. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting? All in favor? Tom made it and Jimmy seconded.